Hey, YouTubers and friends, how you all doing tonight? Absolutely fabulous, I hope. I myself am doing great. Um, Enjoying this little heat wave we're having right now here in Ohio. And I see we have a lot of old friends and newcomers in the chat room. We'll I'll wait to bring in my buddies before we name off some names and anything else. So let's get this party started. I'll be right back.
Welcome to another episode of Tuesday Night Hangout Live. It's Tuesday night Hangout Live. It's Tuesday night Hangout Live. It's Tuesday night Hangout Live. With your hosts, Ed Marvin, Toledo Jess, and Dano. Tuesday Night Hangout Live is a Flash in Your Pan production.
All right. Let me bring in my partners in crime, Toledo Jess.
Hello.
And Dano the Mano. Shrink me
back here
down a little. Bring over the Skype. There they are.
David Villa wants to know what's the name of this bar.
It's called the Hangout. Tuesday Night Hangout.
Yep.
BYOB.
Yep, that's right. Bring your own booze.
Oh, okay, that too.
How's your week been so far, Jesse?
Well, I've got my ceiling almost ready to get tiles put on it. I had my grandson come over and give me a hand today. But my kitchen's coming out. It's getting there.
It's getting there.
It's getting there. Hey,
in progress.
Yep. And when you're doing it by yourself, you know, today was the first day I had anybody give me any kind of help. My grandson come over and mudded a bunch of holes in for me up high. With my bursitis, it's hard for me to work over my head. So, thanks for the help, Evan. He's not listening, but I tell him anyway.
Well, you never know. Your
Right.
sister joins us all the way from Texas. We have a global community with us tonight.
Yes, we do.
We have David, Tasmanian Gold Rush, Australia, from Tasmania here. We have our buddy Joseph from
Green
Mountain State up in Vermont. Thomas, Patrick.
Patrick is here tonight. Mr. Vila, Mr.
The
Fultz.
vocalist is
Get
here
some viewers
again.
building up.
Hook and Hookettes in the house tonight.
Don't
Bob
forget that
from
thumbs up,
Maine.
folks. Thumbs us up.
Thumbs us up.
That's right.
Excellent,
Thumbs us up.
excellent. I don't see Angela yet, though.
There's Jonathan says hi, Ed, Jess, and Dano. Hey, Jonathan.
Hey,
Hook,
Hook.
how are you doing, sir?
I'm running a little in the orange on YouTube right now, so if you're experiencing any lag, hopefully
I am.
Murphy will go back into his closet. Get in there, Murphy.
We dig Missouri's hiding out there in the crowd, too.
Yes, sir.
Yes, that's Andy O'Neill, who was our
Andy.
guest not too long ago.
All right.
Last week, actually. Thanks, guys, for joining us tonight. Why don't we? I'm gonna run a little video clip, kind of primer our next guest a little bit.
Prime it up.
Give a little background on Jovan Hutton Pulitzer. So kick back, enjoy it, and we'll be right back with Jovan.
Who is J. Hutton Pulitzer?
Jovan, a first-generation American, son of an immigrant on one side and a true American patriot heir on the other, knows what it means to be both a global thinker and a true American. Jovan is a survivor. This instinct to survive and excel is part of his genetic legacy. This genetic legacy passed on to Jovan has been tested throughout many generations. For example, Jovan's great-great-grandparents were the only two remaining survivors of the famous Kennedy-Darling Indian Raid during the violent Seminole Indian Wars. Descendants of these same forefathers of Jovan went on, in southern Florida, to serve and partner with shipping and import magnate and once chairman of the Securities and Exchange Commission, Joseph Patrick Kennedy, the father of President John F. Kennedy, Robert F. Kennedy, and Senator Edward Kennedy. A further testament to Jovan's genetic instinct to survive, 4 generations of grandfathers on opposing sides in 4 major wars created 50-50 odds on both sides against the world ever seeing Jovan's creative work. No stranger to change, Jovan transformed himself from welfare baby and homeless teen to corporate wunderkind and media maven and onto technology billionaire. Then in a single day, the whole world changed.
Pulitzer, surviving the dot-com disaster, watched his technology fortunes and his best chance of financial recovery vaporize in the flames of 9/11. Determined, but not done for the count, Pulitzer reinvented himself.
As stories reveal, Pulitzer has 2 sides, the man and the myth, regularly portrayed as an inspiring creative genius or a brutal business warrior. Considered by many an enigmatic figure to study and emulate, Pulitzer has been referred to by clients, competitors, cheerleaders, and detractors alike as a somewhat reclusive genius with the technical know-how of Bill Gates, the daring of a Richard Branson, and the marketing genius of a Sam Walton. Mixed with a touch of Ted Turner and the media hype that surrounds Donald Trump, Pulitzer can't just quite be fully described or pegged. Pulitzer, once the single-minded business warrior racking up conquest after conquest, has returned home. Both victorious and battle-scarred,
Jovan has presented his teachings to live audiences as large as 50,000 at one single event, and has been guest lecturer and featured speaker panelist at such prestigious educational institutions as Harvard Business School, MIT, Stanford University, the Cato Institute, University of Michigan, University of Texas, and the CEO's Roundtable. Pulitzer has also been the featured speaker for corporations such as American Airlines, Radio Shack, Microsoft, NBC, Merrill Lynch, Bear Stearns, and many others. Throughout his professional career, Jovan has been a featured on-air talent for Fox TV, ABC, NBC, and cable networks like Comedy Central, E! Entertainment Television, Sci-Fi, and various international networks.
Additionally, Jovan and his work have been written about in almost every major magazine, every major newspaper coast to coast, and he and his work have been featured on virtually every single television newscast across the nation. Pulitzer and his work have also been featured on such programs and networks as The Today Show, 60 Minutes, PBS, CNN, ABC, CBS, NBC, CNBC, Good Morning America, and 2020.
Man, quite the portfolio you have, Jovan. And thank you very much for joining us tonight on this very low budget production.
Well, you buttered his toast pretty well there, my friend.
I'm happy to be here. Are you kidding? I started TV, and 2 of our cameras were one chip CCD cameras, security cameras. So been there, done that. Know how it works.
Excellent. Humbled and honored Again, excellent. We have our birthday girl in the house, guys.
Oh, we
Uh,
do.
yes, you know what that means, Angela. You better plug your ears.
Are we ready?
Oh, ready as we'll ever be. Ready, guys? A one,
One,
two.
2, 3. Happy
Happy
birthday
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 to
to
you.
you.
Happy
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 What the
birthday
birthday
hell?
to
to
you.
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 Happy
Happy
Birthday,
birthday,
dear
dear
Angelina.
Angelina.
Happy
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 birthday to
birthday
you.
birthday
to
to
you.
you. My voice is cracking a
Geez, I didn't know we were supposed to do it like Marilyn Monroe. I would have put my skirt on or something.
Told a
That's
little
okay.
more feminine about it.
That's okay. I'm wearing mine. We're cool.
Okay,
The seeker says,
good deal.
wow.
Hey, Pirate Dredger here from Scotland, staying up for us. Thanks for joining us. Richard, everybody, again, you're the reason why we do this, right, guys?
Absolutely. And Thomas, folks, it wasn't the lag. It was probably just our
That's
voices.
probably just us, yeah.
Yeah.
You can still laugh,
Don't
Thomas.
blame it
It's
on
okay.
YouTube.
Now you can laugh, Thomas. We did
Well,
that to Thomas too once.
Jovan, it's nice to meet you. We talked a little bit. I watched some of your videos. Really interesting. I remember seeing you on Curse of Oak Island. Was that 2 years ago? Year
It
ago?
was season 2,
Season 2,
Curse of
right.
Oak Island, 8 of the 10 episodes. It was quite an honor to work on Oak Island. Who wouldn't want to work on the longest ongoing treasure hunt in the world?
Who wouldn't even just want to go there? Just with even with my cheapy little Garrett, I'd go there and check it out. I bet there's a lot of other stuff there besides just pirate booty. I mean, just the history of the island itself.
You better believe it. Absolutely.
Probably goes back a lot farther than most people even know. From watching your videos, I noticed that you're more of a researcher. You're really into the old legends and stories and stuff. What got you so involved in that? What tripped your trigger?
I got into this lost history and treasure hunting because of two things. One, I was aware of mineral treasures, which was my first passion because my family runs various mining concerns, and I had been involved in mining. In fact, all I did is repurpose my mining team to become a professional exploration team. But where I caught the treasure, as in the artifact bug, I was literally 5 years old. And my cousin, who you saw with me on Curse of Oak Island, Aubrey, you can't tell how big he is, but he's like 6'5", 300 pounds. And when I was 5, he still looked like he was 6'5", 300 pounds. And he's a few years older than me. And in a river in Texas, where we grew up, right off part of the old Spanish Trail, we actually found a bank robbery stash hidden in the river. So we were modern day Goonies and recovered this treasure, got us hooked for life on the treasure bug. And more importantly, we got a reward, and the reward was a free coupon for a Whataburger at the local Whataburger that we both had to split. And since I was the younger and smaller, I got nothing.
Well, who wouldn't want to be a treasure hunter after getting that kind of reward? I mean, wow.
That was the payday. And it had cheese. It came with cheese. So
okay, well, that's cool. At least you got some cheese.
Yes.
So, I know you're joking around, but what happened with that treasure you guys found?
No, I'm telling you the truth. And
Really?
I'm telling you 100% truth. There's no comedic value in it. That's what makes the funny story very sad. There's no comedy in it at all. But you have to understand the time. So the year was basically, 1970, and I said 5. I meant to say not that I was 5. We're 5 years apart, and so basically I was 10, just so you know. But and he's older than me, and so you have to imagine this is when girls wore really short blue jean shorts, and you parted your hair down the middle, Farrah Fawcett style, right? The Omega Man was the brand new movie at the movie theater with Charlton Heston. And yes. I was the city kid. Now, my cousin Aubrey grew up in the country. He only grew up 70 miles apart, but he was in the country and I was in the city. So I was the city kid that was petrified to touch my nubile virgin feet to the gravel of the river, because I just knew snapping turtles would get my toes, right? Now, Aubrey, on the other hand, he was the epitome of a Tom Sawyer, and so he was the one that could run barefoot through a field of glass and never even get his feet cut, right? So one day on the river, we would hop out of these very large cypress trees, and Aubrey went up top, pretty high tree, over 40 feet, got up at the top of the tree, and I saw him kind of eyeballing something down in the river. And this is at a junction between a resort town and a cowboy town and stuff. So, city slickers and stuff around. Everybody used to lay out on the overpasses to be near the pretty water. And so he dived off into the river and went down and then proceeded not to come back to the surface. And so me, at the time being nervous Nellie, didn't see him come up, and I walk over to the edge of the river and I'm looking for him. And bubbles came up, and I could have swore in the bubbles, like a cartoon, you hear help or whatever, and I figure he's in trouble. And just about the time I think he's in trouble, money bags come floating to the surface, right? You've never seen so many city slickers afraid of the river jump into the river with wild abandon until you've seen money bags float to the surface of a river, right? And what had happened is a bank robbery had taken place. It wasn't an ancient robbery or anything like that, but a bank robbery had taken place. And as they were coming through, they decided to ditch the safe that they got from the robbery, which was kind of one of those stand-up safes. And we think of it as a gun safe, obviously not that heavy. And they pushed it over the side of the overpass as they did by it. It bounced the overpass and fell down into the river. And that's where it was. And it just happened, the fall rolling down the rocks in the overpass broke it open and it went down to the bottom, but it kind of fell upside down, so it trapped everything. And so there was cash and everything, but there was also a lot of checks and everything else. And so we had to call the local police, and the police showed up and, took a report, and we got our name in the paper and stuff. But it is absolutely true. The reward was we got one coupon for a cheeseburger from the local Whataburger that I didn't get any of, but here's the catch. It's not that it was really a reward, because my aunt ran the local Whataburger. So for the recovery of the treasure being here today. But what it did is it really solidified this adventure for us, because many times we've been out on the old treasure trails and we had found, ancient conquistador spurs, and we found old flintlocks, and we've, found stuff as kids. We always knew there was treasure out there. But the one common denominator we all have, and it doesn't matter where you've grown up, whether you grew up in Manhattan, New York, or Manhattan, Kansas, we all in our DNA have this pursuit and belief of treasure, and we want to pursue treasure. And I can prove to you that we have this in our DNA, because you can see people every day drive down the highway and somebody either have a flat or have their hood up, and very few people will stop. However, drive down that same highway and have somebody spy a purse, a briefcase, or a suitcase, the brakes is slammed on, because for some reason we think it's robbery loot, stuffed with cash, and we're going to check it out. It's in our DNA.
Right. Never thought of it that way, but you're right. I mean, we will pull over to pick up a purse or anything like that.
Well, I pull over just to look in a box that looks kind of shut up and laying there, not just a piece of trash.
That's right.
Yeah, I do. Heck yeah, I do.
So it's in us, I can remember as a kid, finding a local trash dump, not like the big city dump or anything, but just like a local trash dump where all the retailers, where the old S&H store was, and finding thousands of sheets of S&H green stamps. Boy, you would have thought I found a mound of cash. That was it, man. So treasures everywhere.
Jesse?
Yeah, what happened?
Oh, I don't know.
That's
Y'all
like
were looking to see if it was your S&H green stamps. I know what you were doing.
No, mine are here in our books.
Mine's all pasted in, he says.
Yeah, mine are all pasted in the books. That's funny because I remember those things. I'm too old.
I do too. I do too.
It's showing our
I might
age.
still have some laying around here that was my mom's. I might still have some of them, to be truthful.
So what is the process that you use when you decide that you want to go out looking for a specific treasure? You know, what dictates what treasure you're going to look for? What are you going to research? Is it just something that piques your interest, or
it starts like that? First, I would tell you this treasure hunting game, just like the prospecting game, this treasure hunting game is a research game first. And if you look at the fact that I'm a geek, I'm a techno guy, I'm hiding out inside a biker's body, but I'm still a geek, right? And so I know how to research and write patents, and I just use these research skills and repurpose them. So first I'll tell you how not to go after a treasure. The number one rule you need to know about hunting treasure is you don't read one story in Reader's Digest and then decide a treasure's there and go looking for it. That is not how it works. How I decide and how our team decides is we have what we call a trip, which is basically a 3x3 method, three times over. So let me tell you what it is. I believe every myth, every legend, whether it be from lost cities, lost treasure, mythical monsters, or whatever, all began at some point in time being something real. You just have to filter through where it got mucked up over time. And I'll give you an example. There used to be a legend for 2,000 years about a mythical red-eyed beast that people couldn't decide whether it was black or whether it was white. It could kind of shape shift. It could crawl. It could stand up. Sometimes people saw this beast and it was white with pink eyes. Sometimes they saw this beast and it was black with pink eyes. But if you were to stumble across one, it would rip you to shreds. Now, this myth went on for thousands of years. However, one day, one person decided to fund an expedition to find that animal. Now, the person who funded the expedition was Theodore Roosevelt. Theodore Roosevelt and a group of other people got together and decided, I think we can find this beast. We're really talented adventurers. Let's go out and find it. So they mounted an expedition to Asia to go find this beast. And they did. And they captured one. And they brought it back. And that is why every one of you today know what a panda bear is. And that is a true story. That's a true story. But over time and over myth and over retelling it, like the telephone tag or telephoning,
right,
it morphs into something else. So the first thing is any treasure legend somewhere has a kernel of truth to it. So the formula we use is called 3x3x3. Here's how we do it. It's typical military triangulation. Of course, you know, most of our team are all ex-military or ex-special ops or intel in some form or fashion. So it's easy to apply this discipline, and you can do it too. Number one, we have a first requirement. The requirement is, in any treasure story, the first thing you start with are the people, right? And then we do a requirement that we must find the people involved in the story, and we must be able to verify they were real and they existed, and it must come from 3 sources. So you can look at military records, birth records, death records, tax records, land records, whatever the case may be. Now, let me tell you how important this is. Another treasure writer that's written a lot of treasure books, I called out one time and I asked him about a story and how did he verify out this story. And he was basically telling me about it. And I said, by the way, do you know this was a script for a 1980s cartoon? None of these characters are real. And of course, that ended the conversation real quick. And so, if you can't even verify the people in it, right? And if you can't even verify that we're real, don't waste your time. So if you can verify the characters, or at least the main character, or some of the main players, right? Remember, you have to be able to account if everybody got killed, how in the hell does the world know the story? Right? So you got to find somebody living some way. So now if you can verify the people through records, that's the first step. Now the second step in it, outside of the people, is the attempt to verify the treasure. Now, treasure can be many things. It can be document, it can be gold, it can be coins, it can be whatever. But you have to verify somewhere along the way that there is a touch point. Those touch points are waypoints. Gold was taken from the ground, it was melted, it was minted, it was transported, and somewhere along the way, that treasure got lost, got robbed, got misplaced, got fallen off into a river, or whatever the case may be. You have to be able to verify there is a plausible treasure or treasure source. Basically, a Wells Fargo bank robbery, or miners bringing gold back, or whatever the case may be. Or if you just tracking the Spanish, right? Because only 1/3 of the Spanish gold haul actually made it back to the Spanish mainland. Third of it got lost between here, the Americas, and going back to Spain. And then last but not least, you have to use classic triangulation. And classic triangulation is you got to go back to all these different stories. And you need to find the treasure story, and this is part of confirming the treasure. You come across this. You need to be able to confirm this treasure legend or treasure story from 3 sources. That doesn't mean 3 people wrote the same story that the first one wrote. That means try to find it in 3 different sources, this local paper, these army documents, etc., right? And as you find out this is real and you start to find it, then the last triangulation, of course, is the geographical information. So if they were headed south and they were going through a ravine that was so deep that you couldn't see over it, and it could look like darkness during day, and it was only wide enough for man and horse, one at a time, not side by side, to go through, and it was headed south towards a river, then you got to start looking at these triangulation things. You look at the general areas, you start looking for those features. And if you can identify in these legends or stories at least 3 geographical markers, a river, a canyon, a rock, a farm, a railhead, whatever the case may be, you basically mark out those 3 and use classic triangulation, and you now focus at that time on the search. And your first search is never recovery, it's always recon, because now you got to verify what you're seeing on the ground. If you will follow that method, verify existence of the people, verify from 3 different sources the story that the treasure is actually real and has been lost, and then verify 3 geographical sources so you can at least begin to triangulate where you know where to work, that is where you begin it. And that's why we've been successful at it. But I'll give you your most important treasure hint if you want to know.
Yes.
Okay. The most proficient journalers, chroniclers, and bookkeepers in the world in mining were the Spanish, right? And the Spanish did 2 things exceptionally well. Number 1 is they listened to the natives. I believe in every treasure legend, in every gold rush, in every gold hunt, that you must listen to the natives. What do the natives have to say? It's like my crew. We were the first people that talked to all the chiefs of the Micmac tribes in Canada about Oak Island. Nobody ever thought to ask the natives what they saw, but yet the natives have been in that same place for 8,000 years.
Yeah, that's funny too, because that's one of the things that we hear about when you go metal detecting and even gold prospecting is you talk to the people that live there. You want a metal detecting area, you talk to the farmers.
That's right.
That you go. One of the best methods that I've heard is you go to the restaurant where they go for their morning breakfast and hang out with them there, and let them know what you're into, and you may run into somebody who's, hey, I have a piece of property that used to be this and had this on it, and no one's ever looked there. Come on over, So yeah, talk to the natives.
That's very absolutely cool. Now here's the number one treasure hunting, metal detecting, gold detecting, mining secret in the world. And this is true bona fide secret. Get out your pens and paper, ladies and gentlemen, and write this down. I am going to tell you how to do it. Number one, I'm telling you, and when you hear it, you're going to go, holy smokes, I never knew. Number one, and write this down. It's one simple hint. When you plan your next vacation, where you want to go is Seville, Spain. Now, the reason you want to go to Seville, Spain is the following. Remember I said the Spanish were the great chroniclers? Right? They wrote down everything. They wrote down everything under penalty of law. If they didn't bring back accurate records, the crown would execute them. They were absolutely brilliant at it. They were brilliant at destroying the locals' records, but they were very good at keeping their own records. And then you think about during their time in a relative strike price of $10 an ounce, right? An ounce of gold at their time was a relative value point during their times of about $10 an ounce. And as the Spanish prospected the Americas and prospected mines, they had a simple rule of thumb. If they could not get, now ready for this? If they could not get $200 a ton, they wouldn't mess with it. Now think about that. They basically had a rule of thumb that if they can't pull out 10 ounces of gold a ton, they would not screw with it. And those records exist in Spain, in the Seville archives. And if you hire a translator and work through it and are very patient, you can find where those deposits are according to the old Spanish. And that, my friends, would be a master strike today.
No doubt.
Oh, yeah. Jeez.
No doubt.
Send me a check. Thank you very much. No.
Okay.
Well, speaking of Spanish gold and stuff, Chris, our friend from East Coast Prospectors here on Facebook, he said, so the Lost Dutchman's gold, real or myth, or did they already get it?
I got it. Okay. So,
inquiring minds want to know.
Do you really want to know? I'll tell you the truth if you really want to know.
Are you going to bust his bubble? Are you going to burst his bubble?
Look, I'm all about the truth.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to tell you what the truth is about the Lost Dutchman mine. If you're a Lost Dutchman hunter, close your ears. Don't hate me, but close your ears, because I'm going to tell you the exact truth for the Lost Dutchman. We spent a lot of time and money on this one. The Lost Dutchman mine in Weaver's Needle is an absolute myth. There is a catch. There is a catch. And you don't have to agree with me. Do your own homework. But here is how we tracked down what is the Lost Dutchman, what is the real story. First off, we know that Jacob and his partner at the time stumbled across some peons, right? Peons being worker Mexicans, peons. And they were picking up gold nuggets. Remember that. Secondly, Jacob Waltz and his partner murdered the Mexicans, gathered up several handfuls of gold. Remember, gold's exceptionally heavy. You don't haul ass with it. It's why stagecoach robbers say, throw down that chest and get the hell out of here, because they got to break it open. They can't just pick it up and run with it. So they filled their pockets with as much as they dared, and they went into Tucson, and they proceeded to drink. And Jacob's partner talked too much, and Jacob murdered his partner. Okay? Then Jacob had a problem. Money, motive, with lack of an explanation. And what Jacob Waltz did to hide the murders, to hide what he could get hung for, is he made up a plausible story for the area that he had found an old mine, very, very rich, and it was Weaver's Needle. And what he would do, as people started to follow him, he would take a very circuitous route, trying to shake them every time, and he had to lose them in order to not have the gig up. So if you look at his life of, if you found the most fantastic mine in the world, why aren't you hauling gold out of it hand over fist? Jacob was not known to have done that. In fact, he lived the rest of his life having his meals, his housing, and his food bought for him by people that were eager to hear the story and would lube him up, right, to hear it. So he made his real living telling the myth of the story about it was Weaver's Needle, which was an impossible place to get to. Here is what the real story is. In the 1600s, 1680 to be exact, all of the native cultures revolted against the Spanish. Okay? It was the first time in the history of the natives that even warring tribes got together. And what they did is this gold, right, that the white man was coming in after, which would cause them to imprison the natives, rape their women, take everything from them, which they just saw as a local stone, and I want nothing to do with it. They decided to revolt against the Spanish. The Spanish had tons of gold. They're trying to ship it back out of the Gulf states. They're trying to get back through the New Mexicos and everything else, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas coast, get it shipped out. The Indians revolted, and they did two things, or three things. They killed almost all of the Spanish. They took all of their gold, all of their equipment, arastas that weren't stone, the stuff they could move, and they threw them down in these mines and pits, and then they covered up those mines. They obliterated all signs of mining and hid it and erased it from history. What happened is, in later years, thinking about Jacob Waltz's time, the Spanish who did survive, who got to Mexico, the few, Peralta is why you know that name, Peralta being given a governorship in later years. The family always knew the legend of the gold. They knew what happened. Right. They knew the Indians took it and hid it. So the Peralta families weren't looking for a mine. They were looking for some key places where all this gold had been ditched and buried by the natives. So what Jacob and his partner stumbled on is where a party was coming out with gold, trying to outrun the local Apaches. When the Apaches attacked them and murdered all the Spanish, the Apaches didn't give a rat's hoo-hoo about the gold. In fact, it was all on the burros and mules. And as the mules ran with the weight of the gold, it's slapping their sides, beating the hell out of them, they're basically spewing gold nuggets. This field is several football fields large, and the natives, when they killed the Spanish and they killed the mules, the donkeys, because they ate the meat, and they took the leather and metal pieces, they let it all lay there to rot. And it was that Spanish family recreating those events that the two peons actually found the field, the gully where this occurred, and he begun picking up nuggets. That is what Jacob stumbled onto, and he murdered to get it. Now let's wipe all that off, and let's shoot forward to modern times. The author who created the series, Perry Mason, right, was one of these people like me that had some means and went out hunting for it. He went hunting for this. And he basically found that this land was now owned by a family, either through ranching, leasing, or otherwise. And just so you know, in modern times, we're talking Civil War post, Jacob Walt's post to now, over 320 people have lost their lives looking for this gold. And the vast majority of them have died with a bullet in their head. And that's published fact. You can go look at the various counties, right? And you can look at it, people disappearing. The commonality at the end of the Jacob Waltz era was they were found with their heads cut off, which was an Apache myth, which was to serve as an Apache a sign that the Apaches were running about. And that's how they scared people off from the area. And then later on, as land rights transferred and stuff, it became very modern and people just mysteriously got shot in the head. FYI, the field's still there. All the gold's still not picked up. And if you're willing to narrow it down and venture into the area, if you're brave enough to still think you can outrun the shot or get it done without it, there's plenty of gold still to be found. But there is nothing that is known as the Lost Dutchman's mine on Weaver's Needle.
Well, we have a question that our friend Pirate Dredger from Scotland asked a while back. It pertains to Oak Harbor, or I mean, not Oak Harbor, Oak Island.
Right.
What is in Oak Island? What is your opinion, your own opinion on those?
Okay, I'm gonna assume that you've seen the series, and I'm gonna give you a few little place markers, and then I'm gonna let you make your own decision without me telling you. How my involvement on Oak Island came about was Prometheus Television, the makers of Ancient Aliens, got the rights to do this show. They courted Rick and Marty for a couple of years after they found out the island was bought, and Kevin Burns basically said this would make a great show. The brothers were reluctant, and the History Channel thought they were a bunch of doofuses and nobody would watch. But Kevin convinced them to do a show, and he did it. He shot a pilot. History Channel said, okay, we'll do this, and they agreed to 6 shows. 5 of the shows made it to air. After it made it to air, they found out that Oak Island had some legs to it. Now, primarily the reason it had legs to it is because that from the year 1803 through the year 1950, 45 million words were written in newspapers about Oak Island. So the world was already kind of pre-sold on this thing. So I got a call, my team got a call from the producers at the History Channel and said, you're actually a guy who professionally does this, right? Now remember, there are television executives go, I can make anybody a professional treasure hunter. Hell, I'll just tape a magnet to a stick and they're a metal detector and they'll do it. And then there are people that really do it, right? And I've actually had that discussion before. And the producers reached out to me and said, you actually do this. You've actually written on it. You actually know what to do and how to manage this as an operation and how to manage it to basically military precision and how to execute on it. What would you do? And so Prometheus flew me and 2 of my other team members out to LA, and we sat with them for 9 hours. And I told them, here is exactly what Oak Island is, why it is, what it is, and what we suspect is there. And then they had us talk to Rick and Marty, and they invited us to the island, which is where we popped up on TV. So now I'm going to give you a few comparisons. In watching season 2 at our finale for the season, you see a scan and map team come in. you see Nick, right, come in, and you see Abbott come in. And that is my team I assembled. That's my scan and map team. And best equipment in the world, which was Kronosberg's. That's where Nick comes from, right? And then Mr. Abbott is scanning the Titanic and known for beautiful, wonderful things. That piece of equipment that you saw go down the pipe, now that equipment had never been used like this before. What that piece of equipment is designed for, and remember, I'm a technologist. I am technology driven. I am scientific method driven. I need hard facts. And so when I reached out to Kronosberg and I said, I think you have the only piece of equipment in the world that can do this. I said, I need this piece of equipment. And then Brian Abbott comes in and the whole bit. That piece of equipment is designed to slide down a pipe in the oil field out in the middle of the ocean. And it's designed to go down a pipe and find the hairline fracture that could cause that oil rig to explode and kill everybody, and you can't get there in time. Now, that's how precise that equipment is. That is the equipment I chose to do what was then, what you now know as 10X, because nobody could see what was down there. It's anhydrate. So you understand the problem with Oak Island. We've all done this. I'm 53. When the 1970s, when Bruce Lee movies came out and he's cracking boards, we as kids had to find a way to do it. And the easiest way to do it, if you didn't have a cheap wooden shingle, was a piece of sheetrock, right? It looks cool, it looks solid, and you pop it and the sheetrock breaks, right? Well, anhydrate is sheetrock. So Oak Island is a Dremel, which means a hollow stone bowl that is filled with anhydrate. This milky, chalky, flaky junk. And when water gets to it, it gets all murky. So I knew we were not going to be able to see a thing. We'd be flying blind. And we needed to find a hairline crack in detail. So we put this thing down. Now, I'm going to repeat for you what was said on the show. You can go back to season 2, episode 9, episode 10, or 8, 9, and 10, actually. You hear Dan Blankenship, who has searched this island his entire life, say, oh my God, I've been waiting 30 damn years to see the bottom of that hole, to see what's there. And you hear myself and Brian calling out the shape of the room. We have stairs. It's this by this. We have an object in the middle of the room that is, quote, ready? You can go back and rewatch the episode. In the middle of the room sits an object that is 4.5 feet tall, 4.5 feet wide, and approximately 7.5 feet long. Now, I want you to understand that's about the size of a sofa if it was blocked. And it depicted it as a block. Now, this is the single most sophisticated drawing, 3D analyzation piece of equipment in the world. And we show the world for the first time what's down in this hole. And you see the steps, and you see these artifacts, and you see these little plates sitting on the side, and you see these carved pillars, and you see this box in the middle of the room. Except TV modified the box because a 4.5 foot by 4.5 foot by 7.5 foot box is not a treasure box. Therefore, it doesn't confirm with the pirate. So they actually manipulated that image a little bit. But what is 4.5 feet by 4.5 feet by 7.5 feet if it was a solid block of stone, per se? It's the size of a what?
Don't know.
A sarcophagus. A sarcophagus.
Right.
And so if you go back and watch season 2, you are looking at carved pillars, carved stone, carved steps, a sarcophagus with votives, meaning plates, offerings, setting on shelves in a room. Now, this caused a problem for Oak Island. I told them... I was
going to say, because...
Say it again?
None of that was even mentioned as far as what was actually down there. They did show the box. I remember seeing that.
Right.
I remember seeing what they thought was a body.
Right.
And a pipe.
That pillar.
Right.
But then
I don't remember anything about. They never mentioned it was a coffin. They never mentioned. I don't even remember hearing anything about stairs.
Do you know why? Do you know why that is?
Probably because it doesn't fit what they're doing.
Correct. Three things. I'll tell you the story as it is, and this I just tell it like it is. You decide for yourself. Number one is, although the brothers have a treasure trove license with Canada, the license with Canada says that, number one, Canada has full right and authority to decide what is an artifact and what is not, even down to coins.
Oh, wow.
What the brothers get is if there is any bullion specie left, coins that they deem is not an artifact, then that's what the brothers can share in, but that share is not determined till after the fact. So the Canadian law is basically, hey, you tell us what's there, you do all the work, we do nothing, and then we'll decide if you get something. But there's a very interesting clause in the treasure trove license that says anything that is found dating prior to 1600, the government has the right to reseize the island. And 4 times in history, the Canadian government, even though this is private property, 4 times in history, the Canadian government has seized control and ownership of Oak Island. Now, I learned this lesson the hard way because when I went into the brothers and we sat down with 8,000 pages of pre-existing research, I said, you want to know why coconut fibers are found on this island? Because 8 of the landholders were privateers. That basically means a legalized pirate. And this is why you find all the coconut fiber there, is because on the windward side of the island, they were staging, they were offloading, they were taking it out. And then that's how they proceeded to take basically to the mainland. This was their quote unquote staging area. And then I said, okay, you found these old rusty Spanish scissors. Does that mean the Spanish was there? And you found this giant shoe, right? Because they have this giant leather shoe that you say is a pirate shoe. I said, well, let me tell you about this lot. And I basically go through the lot owners. And I said, you see this place where you found the shoe and the scissors? Just so you know, that lot owner was a cordwainer. I said, do you know what a cordwainer is? They said, no. I said, a cordwainer is a professional maker of brand new shoes. They make new leather shoes.
Like
by the way, the shears you have are heavy duty leather shoe cutting shears. I said, that was the guy's job. They said, how come we didn't find that out? And I said, well, I'll tell you what, you see me doing the McGinnis Foundation, and I'm looking at these rocks in the ground. History Channel did several special online episodes of it. I said, this is where the lot is. I said, I bet you his old house is sitting there. And I took them straight down the side of the island that has been searched over and over and over for 220 years contiguously, 222 now. And I basically showed them, look in this clump of trees, pull back the trees, and there is the entire stone hut of the cordwainer buried beneath debris, and nobody on the island, including the historian, said, holy smokes, I've never seen that before. And it is because everybody thought it's pirate. And so my answer to you about Oak Island is it's not pirate, never has been pirate. And by the way, the reason they can find a Spanish maravedi is because if you just research the records in Canada, you could even trade Spanish coins for goods right there in Halifax until 1890. They would still accept Spanish coins.
Yeah, I think they did mention that.
Right? And so you got to look at it from the right historical perspective. So Oak Island is ancient. It is not pirate, never has been. It has a lot to do with ancient history. And you are only going to hear on TV what matches with the dialogue that keeps the treasure trove license in place. And it is not in the best interest, as I was told from the producers, the night the show debuted, and I get prepped. By the way, I want to let you know, your presentation's not going to sound like it is. You did a fantastic job, absolutely great. This is stunning, and you're helping the show, and we really appreciate it, but it's not going to sound like you said it. And by the way, I just want you to understand our goal is to get to 100 episodes. And that's when I learned the reality is it's not about the history. It's not even about the search. It's about the love of two brothers pursuing their childhood dreams. That is what people are buying into, which is great. More power to them. And people love that romanticism of going back, living their childhood dreams, stories around the true brothers, and that's it. And so the answer is, what is Oak Island? Oak Island is one of the single most important linchpins in the telling of the true history of North America, the history that's been hidden from you and not taught to you in textbooks.
So, growing up in the 50s and through the 60s and all the way up to now, one of the things that I've noticed is that history has a tendency to change at someone's whim, you know. So the chances of us ever really finding out what history is, at least through any kind of formal education, is pretty slim. So you have to spend a lot of time doing your own research. What in that? Where do you find most of your stuff? I mean, you know, like you said, anybody can pick up. There's tons of books out there on all kinds of treasures and stuff. Where would you look for that one clue that's going to help you go in the right direction, at least? You know?
Good question. First off, I believe the people. First off, all of our history is a lie. It's just a lie. The Columbus myth is horse hockey, right? We all know it.
Right.
But academia and schools still live by it and still teach it. So what I want you to understand is history, and the proper rewriting of history is not going to be made by archaeologists, anthropologists, or the academic elite. It's not going to happen. Therefore, the correcting of the historic context and table is in the hands of, ready for this, metal detectors and hobbyists. Everybody that listens to this program and watches this program that is a metal detectorist, that is an antique bottle collector or a ghost town hunter or any of that, arrowhead collector, doesn't matter. You are the people that are going to break open history. Now, currently, our country has an upside down system. They expect you, if you go out and find something, to go tell the local state college and archaeologist, who will run out there, claim it on their own. If you show up again, they'll have you thrown under the jail. That's a flawed system. It's a punishment system. Should never be that way, because archaeologists and anthropologists have zero money for hunting, right? And all they do is live for somebody to find something so they could take it over and rape for it and make their careers. Because remember, the only way they can advance is discovering something new. Now, the one country that does have it correct, and I've written about this in several of my books, is the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom understands the symbiotic relationship between hobbyists, avocationists, that's the people who do this as a hobby and a passion, and academics. Here's how it works in England. When you go out and metal detecting with in the field, and you find that Staffordshire hoard, right? A few things happen. Number one, you of course want to have permission of the landowner, but there is no hoarding by the landowner even. The government forces you immediately into a 50-50 relationship. You have no say. So what happens in the UK is when you find a treasure, when you uncover this hoard, all you have to do is call the local coroner. That's right. Just like you see on forensic files, you call the local coroner, because chances are, if it's gold, the person who put it there is dead. So you call the local coroner. The local coroner comes out to the site and certifies it and documents it and goes, holy smokes, buddy, you found a treasure. Then, and only then, does the government of the United Kingdom come in, and what they do is they then properly excavate it, get it all out, make sure it's recorded and documented for history properly. They curate it, meaning they clean it up, they make it look stunningly beautiful, repair the pieces that need to be repaired or whatever. Then what the Crown does is they get a bid on the value of that treasure from 3 independent sources. There's that 3 independent rule, right? So they get a weighted average between the 3, and whatever that average is of the 3, you get that money. And if there's a landowner involved, it's not you. They just split it 50-50, no squabbling, and they make you a national hero for uncovering history because they want you out covering the land because they know they can't do it. And that is the way the system should be run in every country.
Oh. Right. And what we've noticed here, especially here in the last few years, people are finding hordes of silver coins and such. And then talking about it, then it winds up being taken because, oh, this could have been in a robbery. This could have been this or that. But they wind up losing it for a while, most of the time. Like us, if we were, like myself personally, probably Ed and Dano and most of our camp members there, if they were ever to hit a big load of gold,
you would never hear about it.
You'd never hear about it.
You'd never hear
You'd only know that, hey, Jesse's driving a new car this year. What's up with that?
Here's the reality. I am not promoting by any means breaking any laws, but I do think the American laws and the Canadian laws are upside down, and it does not benefit what's really important, and that's the finding of it, right?
The finding and the history of it.
It's an upside down political elite BS system, and it turns people to do things incredibly horrible, like finding ancient gold artifacts and then realizing the only way they can get money out of it is to melt it down. Right. And that's forever losing history. So I think until our history changes in the form of laws, that the laws protect detectorists. Now, these same laws can be upside down. Don't get me wrong, because laws can be good, laws can be bad. And I'll give you an example is, the unintended consequences of some of these laws, like a good example would be Oregon. Now, let's say you were in Oregon and you were out in your back pasture because you had a 10 or 20 acre plot of land and you were digging a fire pit, right? And all of a sudden you dig and you hit a piece of metal or something. In Oregon, they say if it's 5 years or older, when you dig and you find something that is believed to be 5 years or older, ready for this? You must call in a state archaeologist. You must fund them to dig it out and verify what it is before you can dig anymore. And if you don't, the government can seize your property and take it over. So it really depends upon where you live. This system in the United States is punitive. Now, the best thing we have going in this United States is exactly the one thing why we worked as a country. Do you know what that is?
What's that?
Well, most people would say it's religious freedom. I do believe that. But the single most transformative event that made the United States of America one of the greatest nations, if not the greatest nation on the planet, is the following. And it's that simple MA 1872, which is the Mining Act that allows any American to claim a placer claim or a load claim as long as you go out, stake it, and file it right, and you use prudent judgment. And there is no rule in the prudent judgment because it could be worth it to you in the gravel. Well, think about our country. It did not matter what social class you were in. It did not matter what education you had. You could be 8 to 80, crippled, blind, and crazy. You could be 400 pounds and one-legged. But if you were willing to get out and dig and you struck gold, that gold was yours. And that is the key single differentiator in our country versus all the other countries around. Is all the other countries, it either belonged to the military or the government. And the one thing that broke this grand experiment open was our inalienable right to have mining claims, go detecting, go mining, go panning, pull it out of the grounds with our hands and be entitled to keep it and benefit from it.
Well, Let me take a hard break real quick, Jovan, and interested in opening up the phone lines, and hopefully some people will call in. But we'll be right back after this word from one of our sponsors. We'll be right back.
Okay, go on.
Adventure, mystery, discovery. Gold panning is more than a search for beautiful rocks. It's a journey that can take you to amazing new places all around the world. It is an experience for all ages, bringing families closer together and fulfilling a spark of excitement when life has grown too dull. The Gold Claw pan makes it easier to take part in the journey than ever before. This expertly designed pan is for any level and any age. All you need is an explorer's heart and the passion for discovery. Begin your family's gold story now. Order your Gold Claw pan today and see where the adventure takes you.
All right, this portion of our show has been brought to you by our friends at Gold Claw.
Gold Claw.
I love my Gold Claw.
Me too. I
So
like my
do
pocket
I.
one.
Yeah,
I love my pocket one.
Oh, and that pocket pan does wonders with that Juno Beach material.
No, I'm telling you.
And after talking to Dennis Dayton, it has more uses than just gold.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can make a banana split in it.
Or put your corn in there with some butter and roll it around.
There you go.
Now, Folkless Westy a while back had a question, but on the Oregon thing, man, they're going the way of California. I tell you, too many Californians moving up there or something. But gee whiz, that's asinine. 5 years, that's it. And you have to call in an archaeologist on your dime.
That just seems really weird because I've got Hot Wheels older than that. You know, my kids have lost Hot Wheels in the yard older than that. You know,
jeez.
That's one of the problems in this country too, is that we go from one extreme to another. You know, oh, somebody got shot, ban all guns. Oh, somebody got run over by a car, ban all cars. You know, we can't seem for some reason to be moderate all the time, you know.
Oh, I found a tin can full of gold coins. The government, it's mine.
It's mine. It was a robbery.
Well, wait till you see the new laws coming out of California and Oregon, where I hear they're going to ban tow trucks and power lines simply because they form a cross on them.
Oh, jeez, Louise. Oh my God.
Okay, that was our political statement for the night. That's one of the subjects that we try to stay far from is politics and religion. You can't change a set mind, so don't even try.
You're right.
One way to start a war or a good fight. So
yep. So let me ask you this, Jovan. How long have you been doing this?
Well, I'm 53, first treasure at 10.
Right.
And professionally, as a professional team or researcher focused on this topic, this is the beginning of year 19.
Yeah, cool. So after 19 years, well, I have a few questions, but the one that's popping in my head right now. Have you ever been searching for something and wound up finding something else that you hadn't anticipated that would be there? Anything like that happen to you?
You can find this video on our YouTube. We were searching for a lost gold vein, and during the search of the gold vein and searching the surrounding area, we came upon massive carved heads, literally carved heads, Easter Islandish carved heads. in the four corner regions of the United States that should not be here. So yes, sometimes chasing gold discovery or old mine or something like that leads to something much older than you expected, that just kind of shakes you to your timbers. And then there's times you walk into a wild area that nobody's been to, and all of a sudden you're looking down in the ground and you basically realize, as your mind reasons it out, it's an old chuck wagon or wagon that has deciduated and rotted, but all the metal rings and bands just kind of fell where they lay, and it had been totally undisturbed for 200 plus years. And that's really fine as well.
That's awesome, because when you said an old wagon rotted away, there was a time when I was in Nevada and I was out just exploring out in the desert, and I came upon a old wagon out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, literally out in the middle of nowhere. It was all broke down and everything. And as I was standing there looking at it, I also noticed a fire ring and a bunch of stones, rocks around the fire ring. So me and my buddy, we kind of walked over and just stood there for a little while and looked. We were actually hunting turquoise on the ground, and realized that what we were looking at was an old Native American fire ring where the natives had sat there and actually napped points. Because I could find around each rock, you could find little piles of shards and scraps and broken arrowheads, and even a couple. Cool. We found about 3 or 4 whole arrowheads or points, as the nappers call them. So that, that's really interesting. We're looking for turquoise. We find arrowheads and an old broken down wagon, and I learned to eat pine nuts.
You pay attention to those things. I'll share with you some of the things that I've learned almost 20 years of doing this, and a few tips and hints for people out there. Remember, treasure hunting takes a community. It's not just a one-man show. It's very hard to do it on your own, and you're a damn fool if you do go out on your own. Right. Too many people don't come back that way. So you're going to want to have a team and a partnership, and you want to work together. So, and by the way, there are trillions of dollars out there. And as I said, the Spanish and their gold, only 1/3 made it back to Spain. 2/3 of it was lost between our country and North America and the shores, and then the ocean headed to Spain. But here's a few things we've learned over the years that you should pay attention to. Number one, anytime you come across an old fire ring where somebody obviously made a campfire, and it's anywhere near any of the old Butterfield trails, Pony Express trails, the real old trails, right? The Overland, Kansas, any of those. Take the time to metal detect the fire ring. Here is why. You're going to get, if it's relatively modern, you're going to get the same pull tabs, but you know what? That happens anyway, so don't worry about it. But in the times of travelers, in the times of distress, you have to understand the pretense of a treasure. And it's called a cache. You're either a cache of convenience, meaning it was conveniently stuck here because that's where I decided to hide it so I would remember. And that's usually like a fireplace, hearthstone, loose stone, or fence post bank or whatever. And then there's other ones which are called caches of duress or cache of crisis. Well, cache of duress and crisis might be like the Indians are coming in and you're camping out figuring for your life, and you got to do something with your valuables. Well, you don't go stick them in a hole of a tree. What we found is a lot of these people do is they will, in those times, they would take their collective wealth, jewels, coins, or whatever, they would bury them deep in the center of the fire ring and then build the fire over it. And the reason they would do that is because the chances of people searching it are not that great. And so when you do come across these old rock fire rings that look really old, take the time to detect it. You might actually find one of these old caches. The second thing, depending upon where you are in the western states, there is a tremendous amount of treasure that's out there because gold's just so freaking heavy. And so with my Puerto Rican teammate on Treasure Force, I always kid with them is what is it about Latin people? Can't they swim? And the reason I say that is because when the ship would strangle and straddle a sandbar in 10 feet of water, everybody still drowned when they could walk to shore. Well, why was that? Well, the fact of the matter is that when the ship would run on the sandbar, is that the crew would immediately run to the wealth and riches and they'd shove their pockets full of gold. Then they would hop off the boat. And when they hopped off the boat, something happened. They couldn't come back up for air because immediately they're going to the bottom because it's like wearing weights. And as it's pulling down on your clothes, you don't have time to undo your belt, which were just tied then. They weren't very convenient, right? And we didn't wear our pants halfway down our crack then. We actually tied them up. And so they would end up drowning because they had their pockets filled with gold. And so you got to understand how heavy it is. So let's go back to the Lone Ranger, Roy Rogers Day, and the Gold Rush days when Wells Fargo was transferring a lot of gold. That's the way it was done. Or transferring payrolls like in Civil War era. Well, a $40,000 to $60,000 paymaster's load in coins, because gold coin was the standard then, in coins weighs about 200 pounds. Do the math. And so if you watch these old Westerns, when they would say, throw that strong box down, right? Well, the reason they had them throw the strong box down is because the box was heavy, very heavy, and you couldn't run with it. And that's why they always told the driver, get the hell out of here, right? They didn't have them stand around. Well, they had them get the hell out of there because they only had time to break open the lock, reach in, grab some coins to put in their pocket, a few more coins to put in their saddlebags, not a lot, because when they were running, they beat their horse to death, right? And about 95% of that gold or that payload that was in that box is hidden somewhere within 500 yards of the original heist. And that's what's not recovered, because these guys hauled butt really quick to not get caught. Yes, they'd have riches in their pockets and saddlebags, but it would be minute in weight compared to what was really there. And if you can triangulate the point of the robbery, then stake a circle, go out 500 yards, start working it in a centrifugal, centric in circles, start working your way back. And if it's there, you will find it, because most of it, 95% of the gold weight, has been ditched from the scene. There's also, for you guys that are on the coastal areas, remember I told you about the Spanish and the coins losing it. Well, here's an interesting fact nobody pays attention to unless you go to the archives in Seville. I'm going to give you one today. If you're on a coast, you can go out and find this for yourself. Well, you know right now, if you go off to the coast of Carolinas or Florida, right, and you find an old ship and you find coins and you start bringing them up, the government's going to be all over you, right?
Right.
Here's a loophole. You ready? A lot of the Spanish ships, when you study what the Spanish wrote, sometime they were finding gold so rich in the Americas that they did not bother to knock out the quartz in the Erastas, that they exchanged ballast, and the ballast was in fact big chunks of gold ore. Just so you know, there is nothing illegal about picking up rocks on the ocean bed.
There you go. I have some questions.
You'd be better off looking for the ore in the ship as the ship's ballast and being able to get that.
The single easiest thing to find. There you go. The single easiest thing to find.
Yeah, a lot of ships have been found just by the ballast stones.
That's right. And nobody bothers to check them, but yet the archives say that a lot of them were such rich heavenly ore that they just decided to take the ore back. Now, of course, on the bottom of the ocean floor, it's not going to look like that. It's just going to look like rocks. So there's your $1 million prize that's out for people to get. It's out there.
Huh. I have a bunch of questions stacked up from the room, Jovan. One's a real quick question from our friend Dave down in Tasmania. I love the commander. Ask him if I come over, if and when I come over to the States, of course, would you allow him to interview you? He also has a good YouTube channel he started up, and he's finding some good gold in Tasmania too.
I'm all about the passion. I'm all about turning people onto this. I believe getting outside is where it's at. You know, a lot of my life is spent writing patents, and you carry me around in your pocket every day with my patents and not know it. But there's a part of me terrified by people looking down at their phones all day. And so I kind of make peace with God by getting people outside through history. So yes, absolutely, I would love to do it. And by the way, he doesn't have to wait till he comes over here. We got Skype, we got other stuff. We can do it anytime.
That's right, because right now you're in Montana, correct?
Most of the time.
Okay. Well, you're somewhere right now, so
yes. If they've got internet, we're reachable. Doesn't matter where we are.
That's right. There you go, David, my friend. And Folkless Weedy, she's asked this a couple, or he, I'm sorry, asked this a couple of times already. Did they ever figure out?
There is no answer for why Matthew died.
Okay.
So let me give you that answer. Nobody, and just so you know the story, the 7 must die is absolute crap. But of course, we now had multiple die because we've had Matthew die, who was a producer on the series. We had Mr. Nolan die, who was one of the original treasure hunters. And unfortunately, we had Drake Tester, young 16-year-old son of Craig Tester, die. But yet television insists on repeating this ridiculous story, the 7th must die. In Matthew's, if you haven't heard the story, you can find it on my SoundCloud. You can find me, you do # History Heretic. By the way, if you don't know this, you see those things which are called hashtags, #, and you see a word. But most people never know how to use them. So I'm going to give you an example. If you were to go to Google right now and you were to put in # History Heretic, no spaces, just # History Heretic, and then hit search, it will only show you everything I've published, not any of the other junk that's out there. That's what a hashtag is for. It's like a laser tag, right? Anyway, Matthew, if you were to listen to the story, Matthew's a producer that died. We were in between filming. Matthew told me he had come across somebody in downtown Halifax destroying an old building. They found a secret room. In this room was an altar. Above this altar was an ancient map of Oak Island. And so Matthew and I are dialoguing about it to get Matthew to meet with the family, because they wanted to meet a producer of the show, and see if we could use the map and the information from the family in the show. So Matt was working on that, and Matt was working with a local girl that was helping him do it as a liaison to the family, and I'm from afar consulting on the phone, getting ready to come back for filming. And Matthew had set a meeting with this family, was going to meet at 10 o'clock in the morning. And so we work all this out. He's to go meet with the family, and at 11 o'clock the next day he didn't show up. And so somebody finally got to looking, went to his apartment and found Matthew dead, kneeling in a praying position on his couch. And nobody from the network, nobody from the brothers, nobody from the production company bothered to reach out to the family to offer condolences or anything. And eventually Matthew's mother reached out to me, because I'm the most vocal. I'm always reachable. It's easy to reach me. I make myself available. You can email me, text me, whatever.
Yeah,
and we talked about
no
it. And they never found out why. To this day, they do not know why Matthew died. There's been 2 different autopsies. He didn't have any heart conditions. He was perfectly healthy. Somehow he just died. So that story to this day regardless of the crap you may read online, is Matthew's mother, straight from the mom, basically has confirmed and reconfirmed, and she did the story with me. We did a tribute to him, that to this day, their family still has no idea why Matthew died. Nothing came back in toxicology. Nothing came back where he had any disease or whatever. That's when I started speaking up. You got to stop this 7 must die crap, which did not endear me to producers. But it's great for a TV hook, but I kind of find it offensive. Right. And now I just want to let you know, with all total transparency and honesty, even though the show is in season 5, this season I have not even watched. And the reason I haven't even watched the show is because I found it distasteful for a television series to talk about when the 7th dies, and then the brothers in the show and the channel say nothing about Matthew. I found that distasteful. Then I found it with Mr. Nolan dying, one of the bona fide antithesis in this, program with Mr. Blankenship dying, that they really didn't stop the curse nonsense. But then when this last year, that would have been part of the season, when Craig Tester's precious young son, Drake, who's only 16-year-old, dies, I kind of had my fill of it. I can't sit there and hear a television show that perpetuates this total fabricated myth that the 7th must die and the treasure will be found. And there's something in me when you multiply how many people watch, how many times that's said during a show, and how many different places, countries, and time slots the show airs. I calculated it up and did a story. It's been repeated about 2.8 billion times, and it's kind of now become like a self-fulfilling prophecy. And so I kind of put my foot down when a precious child dies, and I said, I'm just done with it. So for this season, I haven't even watched an episode. I now hear they're talking about stuff that we discovered and brought to light well over 3 years ago, the Mediterranean angle and everything else. But Matthew, the one question that was asked is, no, there is not a definitive answer as to why Matthew died.
Well, and if they were to announce that, even talk about that, that would end that curse aspect of the story, and then everybody's going to want to know, well, where's the treasure?
See, it's kind of a catch-22. They kind of stuck themselves with it.
Yeah, right.
Right?
Absolutely.
And look, the producer, Kevin Burns, who is the executive producer and crafts every single word that you hear the brilliant voice of Clotworthy announce. What if? Could it be?
Right.
Is it would? Right? Well, the man that crafts every bit of that.
We have a running joke about the wood here.
There you go. Right. I think there's just something funny about all these guys on an island calling, I got wood. Hey, I got wood too. It's just really odd. But Kevin is the only producer. He is a brilliant genius. He is a brilliant storyteller. And I don't think anybody in the world could have made Oak Island into the phenomenal hit that it is, and the now in pop culture forever that it is, if it wasn't for Kevin Burns. But as Kevin Burns made very clear to me November 4th, 2015, not that I'm counting, calling me just before airtime saying, if your first segment's not going to look like you said it, but please understand that. But said, I just want you to understand it's about 100 episodes. And it was made very clear to me that if you're an alien theorist and you think aliens did it, I got to keep you in. If you think Templars did it, I got to keep you in. If you think it was a tar pit for trees, I got to keep you in. If you think it was a sinkhole, I got to keep you in. That all theories must remain valid, and there must not be any periods, which means there can't be any definitive finds, because if there's really hard definitive finds, you're cutting out a segment of the audience that locks onto a certain thing. And he made it very clear his only job is to keep the questions unanswered and going.
Right. They don't really want to find it. If they find it, there's no more show. Now we got to look for something else.
That's correct.
And in that vein right there of something new to look for, there was a question posed. Let me find it here. What treasure hunts are in the future, and what's the holy grail treasure to find now?
Yeah, I saw that Down East Detecting and Prospecting.
Yeah.
Here's what I would
Bob
tell
Drake.
you. What people may or may not know if they don't follow me or my professional team, a lot of people don't know that Scott Wolter, America Unearthed, and I are business partners, right? We're actually the same company. So you've seen Scott Wolter on America Unearthed, Templars in America, Hooked X, la da 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 da, and then of course my work over professional.
I want to talk to you then, because I was just wondering not too long ago how approachable Scott is about coming on our show.
Scott, I'll be glad to help you out about Scott being in. Absolutely. And so this goes back to answering the question, what treasure hunts are in his future and what's his holy grail treasure to find? Mining, if you know how to do it, just like if you're an accomplished panner or placer miner or lode miner, if you know how to do it, you can make a living at it, and you can make a nice living at it. Treasure can be many different things. The way I would answer this is what treasure hunts in my future, what would be my holy grail? I'll name off a few for you. Scott and I are personally working on what may be the most single important rewriting of American history you've ever heard, and that's been an ongoing research project. And just the documentation alone, documenting all the facts and dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's, it's now like some ridiculous 6,000 or 7,000 pages of published work. So I'm excited about that, but I can't tell you what that is. Next, what I would really like to work on is if you go back in very distant ancient times into the Vedic Indian cultures in their Mahabharata, which is their sacred text, they talk about an ancient city that fell into the ocean or got subsumed by the ocean. And that is right off the coast of India. It has been found, it's about the size of Manhattan, but it's a true bona fide underwater city. And that has never been sufficiently mapped and explored. Two main reasons: infested with tiger sharks and hammerheads, and the water is very murky. But I would really love to work on that one. And then two things I'm most passionate about when it comes to current treasure hunting is now the use of LiDAR and the affordable ability to LiDAR and other full spectrum photography that you can do on drones yourself that reveal things hitting underground, mounds, pathways, roads. I think that will lead to more finds. And I'm exceptionally excited about, and if somebody was going to get into professional exploration and treasure hunting, I would tell them work on drones, underwater drones and vehicles, and work on that, because since the Ice Age, our oceans have risen on average 600 feet across the board. So I want to put this for you. Let's say you were living in Mississippi, or you were living in the Texas Gulf, or even Florida. Think about how far from your current coastline, how so far you have to go out into the ocean to get to where the water is 600 feet over your head. Sometimes it can be miles out there before you ever get to the depth of that water. And that's where our coastlines were 8, 10, 12,000 years ago. And as we know, mankind gathers on the shoreline. So I truly believe, by sheer volume, the vast majority of things to discover, the true history-making things, the lost cities, the magnificent lost treasures, temples, etc., are underwater, and that's where people need to focus their efforts.
Okay.
Now, something about the sea levels rising, that would be a good time to bring up Chris Chadwick's question. Chris C. ECP, Prospector in the room. It's about the city Atlantis, fact or fiction. got to know, please.
Well, here's how I can answer it. If we were to study historically the myth as the Great Deluge, there's a thing called pre-diluvial times. That basically means, in shorthands, pre-Noah's flood.
Ark, right.
Okay? Pre-Noah's Ark and flood. Now, archaeology and anthropology, although all universities used to be theological institutions, never want to confirm or codify anything that's going to lend any veracity to the Bible. They just don't want to do it. And so they avoid it. So now I go to, and this is a long answer, but you'll understand why. Now I go to the story of the Great Flood. I wrote a book on this. It's called The Great Deluge. And if you look at the Great Flood, there are over 2,000 individual indigenous stories of the Great Flood. And some of these are tiny islands that never saw a Christian missionary until the mid to late 1800s. So how in the hell did they know the biblical event of a great deluge unless it occurred? Now, we get told stupid stuff by archaeologists like, oh, the reason there's a 2,000-year-old coin there is because somebody carried it in their pocket and dropped it. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm certainly not carrying around gold coins in my pockets. And if I was carrying my prized possession, 2,000-year-old gold coin, I'm certainly not stupid enough to lose it in my pocket. So we got to kind of throw that out. And so what they do is they conveniently hide things about the truth of mankind. And a good thing is just go to Easter Island and look at the heads. Well, we see these great big heads over the island, but did you know there's a 40-foot statue connected to the head?
Right, there's the whole body's there. It's not just the head.
That's right. Now, here's an interesting one for you. The ancient Egyptians, we have been told since Howard Carter discovered King Tut's tomb that the pyramids were built by Khufu, right? But what does ancient Egyptian history say about the pyramids? Well, the ancient Egyptians, even in the 12th century, were talking about how their ancestors dug the pyramids out of the sand thousands of years ago. Right? So if we look at some of this stuff and we understand all as gold panners and miners that, hey, the gravel beds can build up really quick and suck something in. And then I just told you about just from the Ice Age, water's up 600 feet.
Right.
I think it is very safe to believe that cities, many cities, maybe not just one, but many cities have gone missing under the waters due to tidal waves, tsunamis, flood, pre-diluvial, post-diluvial, and glacier melt. Then there is the one anomaly of, I personally think as a professional researcher, I am convinced more and more every day we've done this before. And the deciding fact for me, if you look at Baalbek in ancient Lebanon, and you look at some of these blocks, and these blocks are 10 stories tall, 100 yards long. We're talking thousands of tons.
Things we can't even move today.
Well, the most we can move today is 70 tons.
Right.
The biggest piece of equipment, earth-moving equipment we have today can only move 70 tons, but they want us to believe they rolled them on logs. You know, and I know just from dredging, if you were rolling rocks on logs, you would leave a paved highway by the time you were done because you'd pulverize everything underneath it. Yet they didn't exist. So I believe personally we've done this before. We may have been destroyed 4 or 5 times by my count. A few of us survive and restart. And so do I believe it, Atlantis? Absolutely. I don't even flinch. Do we know what could have happened? No, we don't. Do we know cities can fall into the ocean or be consumed by a tidal wave? Look at the Christmas Eve event that happened decades ago that, swallowed the Asian coast. It can happen. What we have is a disconnect in the timeline, and here's what I mean. Archaeologists want us to believe that we were all ignorant ape cavemen that couldn't do anything, and they're not going to accept advanced civilization. But I'm going to pause for one moment. And the pause for the one moment is, what if we are really much older, because there's evidence of it on every continent? It's just like people think of pyramids in Egypt, and you have the 9, the 3 main ones, the 3 smaller ones, but they have no idea there's over 200 pyramids in China. There are pyramids on every continent on the planet. And we didn't build them. They came from somewhere. So for me, it is not hard to believe that when we used to be Pangea, meaning one big continent, that we may have been a different type of people. Even the Bible says the men of old or the giants of old. And we do know that cataclysmic events pulverize Earth. And we do know the Earth can morph. And we have evidence right in front of us. Let me tell you why. When a dinosaur dies, do we get a fossil? No. Just like we don't get a fossil when a deer dies. But when there's a climactic event that covers it with dirt, sediment, and packs it, then we get a fossil, right? And so we know this Earth has been transformed. And I believe somewhere in that transformation that, yes, there was a great city of great learned people, and it got lost. Here's what I think we are. We are not ancient astronauts. We are ancient survivors. If you've ever watched the movie Mad Max, what you and I are to this day, we are Mad Max's children. We are just this much further down the line, but somewhere our own people had to restart and they had to start over. And if you are a fossil digger or you're an artifact digger, you know it. And here's how you can tell it. You basically dig for arrowheads, and you'll find these nice, beautiful arrowheads, really formed, napped perfectly, beautiful works of art. And you keep on going down in the mound, and they get cruder and cruder and cruder and cruder. And then you have this weird red layer of dirt, right? It's kind of like a sandy clay, but it's red. It's very thin. That's part of the iridium layer created by an asteroid impact. And after you dig through that layer, and you start with great points, and they get worse and worse and worse, and then you get that red layer. When you get to that red layer, you know what you get? Brilliant points, and then they go backwards in time again. And then they do it all over. So I think we've done this over and over. So that is my long answer to abso-freaking-lutely. There is an Atlantis. There may be several other ones of them. And don't let anybody who never gets off their butt and hunts and tells you no, because some people just don't want to know the truth. And I say, you know what? If I was to find out that I'm made of fly spit, worm, dirt, and turtle semen, and that's where I come from, you know what? I really don't care because I like who I am, but at least I know from whence I come. And I got an answer.
So, okay, what would... I know some of it's political, and some of it's really religious, but what would be the advantage of hiding something like giants? I mean, because we are all aware that they did exist at one time.
I think it comes down to rule of authority, and I'll give you an example. When Lewis and Clark were sent west by Jackson, it wasn't to chart maps, it was to see who's been here before. And they discovered that other people had been here before and make land claims. And that's why Lewis ended up committing suicide by somehow shooting himself twice in the head. But that's another story.
No, that's done nowadays, too.
Right? But that's another story.
Right.
I think it all boils down to two things. I think it boils down to that if we were to prove definitively we were much older than we thought and could do great things, then we would have, in a very modern way, a very hard, sobering proof that man can't really wipe his ass off the planet. and that leaders come and go. And I think in the current system of any political class, ruling class, elite, or church, they are worried about losing control. And it's all about control, and it's all about chasing the money. And controlling the money and controlling the opportunity is never good for mankind. And if you don't believe me, go talk to a Native American who has everything provided to them by the government, even down to the diet, and find out why their average mortality rate is they're 34 years old. You can't rely on the government to do it. But it's all about the big money rig, and it's all about the big money game. And so we have lost our identity as men, and I don't mean that in the genitalia sense, right? I don't care if you're Pat, John, or Caitlin. It doesn't matter to me. But as men, as mankind, we've lost ourselves. And you forget. So I go back to Minoan days. In Minoan days, when ancient mariners sailed the world, they probably had a Muslim that, actually there was no Muslims till 700, but they probably had somebody of a different faith in the Middle East, and they certainly had something from the Far East that was probably their metallurgist and their chemist and their astral navigator. And that, it didn't matter what God you bowed to, what God you pledged to, what God you lived for, what class you lived for. They knew they were in this together, and they all had to work together, and it didn't matter. And I think we've lost that in our identity as mankind. So I think the number one overwhelming reason history's hidden is because people are about losing control. And then the last part of it, the very last part of it, is when giants come to the forefront and are properly researched and revealed, it will create a shockwave, because Christians will use this to say, look, we were right, atheists will freak out, right? Yep. And that's the big disruptor. But again, when you go back and you look at history, they've always said that they're one of the biggest believers was Abraham Lincoln used to talk about it the old time. If you go back to looking at the founding of St. Louis, in the founding of St. Louis, they opened a cave, a limestone cave, found 2,000 mummies in it, true bona fide mummies. And of course, the people in founding the city were freaked out about it because it didn't match what we thought our history was. And they burned them all as kindling in the street. Man. And so if you want to know the truth, and I'll go back to a question you answered earlier that I didn't flesh out completely, but you said, what would you do to find these things? If you want to find where to research, if you want to find where to treasure hunt, I would suggest you get online and you look at the old museum donation list. All these museums, men of letters, always used to talk about who donated what to the museum. And so I'll give you an example. In Nova Scotia, you'll find things like Roman brooches, and you'll find Roman pendants, and you'll find Phoenician glass, right? And you'll find where locals, I found this on this beach in 1780 and kept it in the family. And in the 1800s, they went ahead and donated to the museum. Or if you can find out where those were found, right? And they'll give, in a lot of them, you'll see the old explanations of where they were found. Go look in those areas, because there's probably more. And that's the secret to history. If you want to understand our future, you got to go look at the past. And what the people who try to guard it and suppress it today don't realize is all those old journals, back before it was politically correct, you don't mention that. You know, we're all hyphenated Americans. Before all that political crap started, a guy could say, look, I found this bronze sword, or I found this shipwrecked out here, and they'd write about it, and they would log it and journal it and say, wow, this isn't from America. I wonder how it got here. And then it would just stay at that. Well, all of those books and all of those findings and all of those proceedings and old newspapers have now been digitized. That's your treasure trove. Go back and find those stories, right?
So don't stop at that book you got from the library or the bookstore on treasures. Go beyond that.
Exactly. You've got to go back further in time and look up when it was okay for people to talk about it. It was okay for people to talk about, wow, look at these old carvings. These are real ancient symbols. Where today an archaeologist will go, well, no, that's a glacial erratic when the snow melted and it wiggled on the rock that way, and it's just a straight.
We had those.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're giggling here a little. I got a question.
Go.
What's been the weirdest thing you've ever found? I mean, weird. I warned you.
Let's see. The weirdest. It never fails on any professional mission we go out, and we're on the ground sometimes a month at a time or more. It never fails to humble me, awe me, and freak me out a little bit at the amount of dead bodies we find.
Okay. I didn't think you were going to go there, but
it's true. It's just kind of a common occurrence, and I've seen everything, and I've come across old battlefields where they were lost up in a section of woods, and prospectors and Indians battled it out, and here lay bodies, right? Old bones and remnants strewn about. I think it always sets me back a little bit to find a dead body. Modern dead bodies, I just kind of shake my head at. People that go out ill prepared, but they got a packet of Skittles, a packet of smoke, one bottle of water, and they're going treasure hunt, and they go out and get themselves killed. I feel bad for that. But then there's just something about when you find a body that might be several hundred years old or even much older, just to think about what their life was about, and I wonder who this person were, and I wonder what kind of descendants they have and stuff today. Those are just some of the weirdest stuff. Or finding an old body that still has a flint, an arrowhead lodged in the bone that took its life, or lodged in the spine. You could see it's happened. I think that's kind of weird. I would say that's probably the
that's pretty weirdest. Weird. You can't get too much weirder than that. I mean, other than a spaceship, maybe, or.
Patrick Moore asked, did any of them have their cash with them?
Cash?
Their treasure?
C-A-C-H-E or C-A-S-A?
Right. Yeah. No. C-A-C-H-E.
Yes.
Their cache.
Yes, their cash. Absolutely. Yes.
There you go, Patrick. Let me take another hard break real quick, Jovan, and then we could open up the phone lines this time.
Yeah, you were supposed to have done that earlier.
Oh, yeah, about an hour
ago.
Yeah. All right. Well, on that note, we'll be right back.
I'm going mute.
After this message. As many of you know, we have Jovan Hutton Pulitzer with us tonight, author of over 300 books on treasure hunting and hidden history or forbidden history, inventor, you name it, he's done it. If our phone lines are going to open up, if we didn't get to your questions in chat, feel
There you
free
go, Chris.
to
Time to call in, ask all your questions.
make this line useful. Brought to us by Carolina Prospectors. So use the phone.
Okay, what's been your best discovery? Just we're waiting for someone to call in.
An ancient city in North America that should not exist in North America, that's normally associated with South America, Ecuador South. And the city and finding is so prevalent because it's built primarily underground in the side of a mountain. But one of the key ways we found it is we trilled cotomundes, which was an ancient Incan and Mayan food source. They raised them like rabbits, and we were able to track down this mountain in the Americas, meaning North America, where cotomundis were living inside the mountain, and that's what gave us the clues when we couldn't get close to them. They kept on disappearing, that they were going inside, which led us to investigate further and end up finding the remains of this ancient city.
Let's hear in, is it North America or South America?
North America.
North America.
It should be in South America. Remember,
okay,
the people that we know as Aztecs, Mayans, Teotihuacans, etc., in their mythology of their people, they say they come from Aztlan or Aztlan, which they say is in the north, like Utah. However, our anthropologists and archaeologists who know more than the indigenous people said, no, you're nuts, you're from South America. But if you believe the indigenous, they say they're from North America, and we have found one of these cities.
Being Mexican, I've always been told that Mexico actually used to reach all the way up to Canada.
Absolutely.
So when people say, well, at the border, no, actually Mexico went all the way up. This was right. Mexico.
That's right.
It's not like, we invaded you. You basically invaded us, But I'm an American, first and foremost.
I'm
not hyphenated in any way.
I am a proud patriot American, a proud patriot conservative American. I believe and bleed red, white, and blue.
Absolutely.
At the same time, I'm a Jew, and my mother is an immigrant. But there is something special about this country, and there's something special we stand for. And I really don't care what we find, but there is no way we can go back in time and repatriate everybody and make reparations from what ancestors did. It is what it is. We are all adults. We all now have our own countries. It's time to just live and move on.
Absolutely. I agree. Absolutely.
Our good friend Pirate Dredger had a question in the room. It has to deal with Rosslyn Chapel. He asked a while back if you could please explain the corn that's carved in Rosslyn's chapel.
If you were to know my family history, most people that have followed me over the years know a few things about me because, one, I am American, but just like I told you, my mother's an immigrant. I'm European. I'm German. I am, in my family, a gun descendant. I am a descendant of, living, breathing descendant of Sinclair. I would tell you what you're seeing in Rosslyn Chapel is you're seeing depictions of trade, important trade items. But I want to lift it just for a moment out of Rosslyn Chapel and the corn, because I want to prove it to you a different way. And an example is, if you look at modern history tells us that corn, which is basically an item of the Americas, that corn was something that after Christopher Columbus came, that he discovered, he dug corn, he liked it, he took it back to the old world, and therefore that shouldn't be corn at Rosslyn Chapel or any other place. Now, the reason they tell you that, and they debate, no, that's not corn, that's just a bumpy flower. The reason they tell you that kind of crap is because they're trying to conform to a story that was sold and told long ago. But if you look at corn, you can actually find corn in the ancient Levant. You can find it in Mesopotamia. You can find it in Uruk. You can find it in ancient Turkey. You can see depictions of it. And it's because that American product was being shipped and come from around the world, because in ancient times we sailed the ancient seas. And so, yes, it's corn, and it's a depiction of the truth. And the truth is the world was known, but it was hidden by the church because they didn't want people venturing out thinking you could go make your fortune. And so they convinced you on the outside of these waters, meaning out of the Mediterranean, there be sea monsters. Do not go there, for you shall surely die.
You'll fall off.
That's right.
And
that's
it
why
was
all
all a
those were
control
created.
issue then.
Well, see, most people don't know this. You know, that's what is the Dark Ages. People think, what, did the clouds cover the sun? The Dark Ages literally means the time the church forbid learning, forbid reading, hid everything from mankind. That is the literal meaning of the Dark Ages, which is where the term comes from, keeping you in the dark. And that's where it comes from. So
And that's
Rosslyn
the
Chapel
purpose.
is, in fact, corn, but you can find it in many cases around the world, just like you can find another definitively American product, which happens to be cocaine and marijuana, which are specifically American products, but yet you can find it when DNA and chemical tests are done on all the ancient mummies in Egypt. They all have common denominators that they had cocaine and marijuana. How did they get it if you weren't traveling the globe?
Right.
We have a caller on. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi there. My name is Janet, and I've been following Hutton for a long time.
Hello, Janet.
Thank you,
Hey, Janet.
Good evening, Janet.
Hi, Hutton. Glad to speak to you. How are you?
I am doing well. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I just have a question. I've been following you and listening to you for, about 3 years now, and find everything that you do absolutely fascinating.
Thank you.
There are big cities such as Cahokia in Illinois that have been not very well researched. I wondered if there's anything that you know of on the Canadian side of the border.
That Mound culture is probably one of the least acknowledged presences of an advanced civilization in the Americas there is. And it was a widely traveled culture because in some of the mounds that have been excavated, you find trinkets and votives and figurines and fetishes of jaguars and other stuff that shouldn't be in the Americas. It does extend into the Canada area, but there's an interesting twist with Canada. See, if we were to look at Ohio and we were to look at some of the mounds here, the mounds that we look at are found in the fertile deltas and the valleys and stuff. At one time in the Great Lake region and north, it was the same way, very fertile land. And there are mounds, and there are rock mounds, rock buildings, and everything else. But an interesting thing happened, why you don't hear a lot of talk of them in Canada or just that edge by the Great Lakes, and it's what's called glacial rebound. And so just like I talked about earlier, that the ocean levels are up higher, several hundred feet, It's a reverse phenomenon in the Great Lakes region, just, both on the American side and the Canada side. When the ice and the glaciers melted, it relieved a pressure on the ground and the land went up versus the water going up. And so where you find these interesting mounds on your side of the border, if you're in Canada, you find them at higher elevations. And so if you were standing trying to look for the signs of some of these ancient civilizations, you wouldn't be looking on the side of the lake where you think it would be, or even some instances, depending upon where you are, under the water. You would actually look several hundred feet up in higher elevations. And then if you know what you're looking at, you can clearly see docks and mounds and all this other stuff that people don't think to look at. Then on the Canadian side, you have one other phenomenon, is a lot more of it is hidden simply because of the nature of the forestation in our borderlands that we share versus what the Americas did, opening up a lot of prairies with settlers and cutting down trees, making these more evident. But yes, there's a tremendous amount on your side, and you can literally triangulate them. Let me tell you how to do it. Go to Google Earth, or go to your search engine and go to Google Earth, and you're looking for where people have marked the mound culture, where they've marked the various mounds and the various signs. They literally run almost on an axis, right? And along the great grand rivers like the Mississippi and stuff. You can literally plot the ones in America, use your drawing tool in Google Earth, connect 2 or 3 of them to where you get on that axis and draw it all the way up into Canada. And that's where you're more than likely to find these things hidden. They're going to be deeply forested in trees. But if you know how to read a topographical map, or you know how to use the date feature in Google Earth, you can go to Google, open it, and you'll see something that looks like a clock. Well, if you click that clock, then it allows you to search backwards in time. And so if you'll scroll along the timeline, look for the times when the foliage was the least because of winter, and you might have better signs. And then now most governments, most people don't know they're there, but Google your state or your province's LIDAR efforts. Right now, all across the Americas and Canada, they're flying LIDAR missions. And of course, LIDAR peels away the trees, peels away the grass to foliage, and you can see these mounds. So I would suggest your first start on the Canadian side is look at the Canadian government LIDAR programs and start searching through the LIDAR maps in your area, and they should stick out like a sore thumb.
Well, they have LIDAR on Google right now?
No, you can go to Google and
Google
you
Earth,
can map
right?
stuff, but you got to look on your state sites or your county site. And then when I say Google, I'm now talking the search engine, and Google, like Google your county or your state, and then plus sign LIDAR, LIDAR. Okay, you can't just put like Ohio LIDAR, because that could be the name of the LIDAR company. But if you're Ohio plus LIDAR or Ohio plus LIDAR plus archaeology, you can find most of the universities, campuses, and government programs that done it, and you can access them. They're cumbersome. They're kind of hard to get a look at, but they're there, right? And ironically, in the BLM 2000, do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Right? In the LR 2000 records that miners use, right? If you use the old or the current LR 2000 system and you know how to use it to locate a mining claim, they now in their archives have started incorporating in LIDAR. And that's cool because not only can you find these old mounds and roads and stuff, but you can also see the ancient tertiary or alluvial beds that you can't see by foliage as well. And that you can see through the LR 2000.
That's absolutely fascinating. I will do that. And I'm just trying to make myself a plan for spring. Because we've got about 2.5 foot of snow right now. So I just wanted to do some research over the winter. And I thank you for your time.
I would Google, you know what? People in older times, go back to your 1800s and your 1700 newspapers and search the old newspapers and keyword search for weird artifact or weird mound or weird burial and see where locals would stumble across things and talk about it openly in the paper and start seeing the papers that reported it. That may be one of the best ways to find one that's been hidden from the current consciousness just because it's so old. But there was a time they were openly talked about and it was okay and it wasn't something taboo. So start with your newspapers, find the oldest newspapers in the area, go into the archives, do a newspaper archive search, try to search for weird artifacts, old carvings, old mounds, old burial sites, and that could be one of the quickest ways to find where somebody stumbled across something, then find it on a modern day map and start searching it from there.
Okay.
Very
That's
cool.
all good advice.
And
thank you very much for your time. And
you know what? Thank you for following me, and I love that. And thank you for liking my work. And even if I only had one listener and one follower, and that was you, it would still be worth it because this is just about getting the word out. And so thank you so very much.
Okay.
Thank you, Janet, for calling in and listening to our show tonight. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Definitely.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I have another question from the room from Volkless Weedy. What do you think of Cooper's treasure and mapping shipwrecks from space, since you believe there's a lot to find underwater?
Number one, it is a bona fide fact that from space you can see some of these things, but you don't have to go to space for it to do it because you now have this great interesting thing called Google Earth.
Right.
And so, yes, Google Earth is one of the best tools there are. If you want to get proficient at this, let me tell you what to do. Go onto eBay or Amazon and buy you a cheap pair of what used to be 3D glasses or video glasses, you know, where you could plug into your DVD player and it now makes it look like a 70-foot screen, right? They used to be expensive, now they're $30. Buy you a pair of those because they will plug into most computers, okay? Plug it into your computer, fire up Google Earth, and instead of looking at it on your computer screen, you're now looking at it through these glasses like you're in your own little private theater, and it gives you the illusion that it's 70 foot tall. I mean, it's big IMAX screen view. And then when you get into Google Earth, okay, set you a distance over Google Earth at about the 10,000 foot level. You look down at the bottom of the screen, you'll find your comfort zone. I try to hover at about 5,000 to 7,500 feet myself, but most people don't have the patience for that. But find you a level that you can go at. And then basically what you do, push your cursor in the middle of the screen and then tap it real quick. And the screen will just start to crawl very slow, right? You do it fast, it'll zing by. But if you just tap it real quick and it starts to crawl slow, it will continually crawl. And now you just sit back with your headset on, take it in like you're flying it, and watch for anomalies. And when you see some that's an anomaly, boom, stop right there, mark it, don't try to investigate it, make sure you bookmark it, go back and look at it later. I like to use Google Earth for oxbows. Do you know what oxbows are?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I love to use Google Earth in the western states to decide where to metal detect. Here's what I do.
Okay, what's an oxbow before we get too far?
I go back to the ancient riverbeds and I put my cursor going down the river. And what I look for is that ancient switchback in the river where it makes an oxbow, but where it's 50 feet higher, 60 feet higher, 100 feet higher than where the river is today. That's where you go. Why? Because it took a couple of million years for the current river to cut to the lower level. And you're basically looking at old gold deposits in those oxbows way back when. That's your virgin territory.
Yeah. And look for those ancient channels.
That's right.
Yeah, it's amazing the tools we have at our fingertips nowadays compared to, just a short time ago, 20
Well,
years.
20 years ago, before the advent of Google Earth, I used a lot of the terrestrial services in our research, but that was like a $50,000 subscription. Right? And that same thing that used to be a $50,000 subscription or used to be $1,000 a second of satellite time is now yours, technically absolutely free on Google Earth. Great tool.
Definitely.
So Chris has was wondering what looking around his farm would be, if that's worth doing. See what his question was here.
From Google Earth?
No, with a metal detector on his property.
Look, yeah, absolutely. Every people have been here before. It doesn't really matter what you find. Any find's a great find. Even beer tabs are great finds if you find enough of them and you're the king of beer tabs, right?
Right.
Most people keep their original find. It's about getting out. But if you have an old farm, the chances are you're the only person that ever lived there is not really that great. Go looking. One of the ways I find where to detect is, again, I go back to Google Earth and I look for rectangle or square or circle clumpings of trees. And what that tells me is there used to be a cabin there, right? And that at some time the trees grew up around it. And then the trees got big enough, they either pushed in or imploded the cabin, and then it deciduated and it's gone. But the trees remain in the form or the outline of the cabin. That's where I go, because there you go. That's virgin land, hadn't been turned over, hadn't been mowed down, hadn't been chopped up. Go for it.
There you go. Yeah, where you? I think Chris is in Georgia,
West Virginia.
He's in West Virginia.
Okay. West Virginia is great. I always point out a few things. What was the largest single gold rush in the world? Do you know?
Largest single gold rush in the world.
Was it the Klondike? Was it Cripple Creek? Was it the Sutter's Mill Strike? What was the single largest gold rush in the world?
Well, I know that it was one of the first ones down in Georgia, North Carolina, in that area.
That's the first gold was found. But for the most people panning for gold and the most gold collected by miners picked up by hand, when was that? Was that the big gold rushes? No, the answer was it was the Great Depression. And it was at the time when mankind was down and out, it was like at the Great Depression, and people got out in the streams and stuff, and they actually picked up more gold than most of the gold rushes. Which led to another phenomenon. We used to be paid in gold.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Not the paper money we have now. So at the Depression era time, that crossover time when we're switching from a gold standard before the government conveniently made it illegal to own gold, and a lot of silver and stuff, people didn't trust banks. From there backwards, there was no banking trust. Yes, you might not find $1 million hoard, but can you find that money? Can you find it there? Absolutely. Next thing I would say is everybody loves detecting Civil War stuff. Now, I'm not going to get into the legalities of battlefields, but you know what you should be detecting? Not the battlefields. What you need to detect are the campsites.
Right, where they camped.
Because every one of those men who had pay in their pockets, whether it be Romans or Greeks or Spaniards or Civil War soldiers, they all did the same thing. They stashed their loot to come back and get it later. They did not take it onto the battlefield. So if you had 1,000 soldiers fighting, there are statistically 1,000 caches out of there. And if half of those men got killed, you got 500 bona fide finds that are there. And it even goes back to all the ancient lands, all the ancient settlers, criminals. When you go to the robber's roost, you don't look for the robber's roost and loot because they were criminals. They didn't trust each other.
They're going to hide it there.
In different places. You search around the campsites, not, oh, I found robber's roost. There was no chest there. I'm gone. That's not how it works.
Well, it's like even today, you metal detecting let's say a campground. You don't go where they have the trailers and the tents and stuff. You go to where the campfire is, where everybody's sitting around it. That's where you're going to find your coins and your rings and that kind of stuff. What about Butch Cassidy's treasure? I know there's a group out there, Prospecting America, who's in the looking for it or trying to find it, I guess. What's the story behind that?
I call that a more modern robber. In Butch's stuff, I'm more interested in the ties to Maximilian in Mexico and South America than I am the stuff in the States. That's what I would focus on. I'm not a Forrest Fenn guy or whatever. I do see Down East Detecting and Prospecting said, Jay, any good treasure hunter has a cool find within his arm's reach.
I was going to bring that up.
Okay, you ready? So hang on 1 second. Hang on.
Now, Bob, anyone in here that doesn't watch his live stuff on Facebook and stuff, he has such an awesome study, all kinds of stuff on the walls and around. I'm sure he has something really interesting he's going to bring.
He disappeared out of you. He went to go get something.
I dropped my headset. I disappeared. I went back into my office, and Down East Detecting and Prospecting is absolutely correct. So let's take a look. You ready? Let me see if I'm going to show this up here.
Oh, wow. That's a cool ruby ring.
Yeah, it's a Spanish colonial ring. Of course, I hope y'all can see it. I can't see it on my screen.
I didn't see it. Stick it in front of your face. There you go.
There you go.
There you go.
That's a Spanish colonial ruby ring. The stones are missing on this piece, but you can see that's another Spanish colonial piece.
Oh, that's cool. Is that a box lid or something?
It's actually a medallion. It looks like a box, but it's how they folded the metal.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Well, that was a medallion? How'd you that around your neck?
Right? Let's see. I mean, I got tons of stuff laying around.
So when he said that your finds are like right there at arm's length of your computer, what was he talking about?
Well, he just mentioned on the screen. He says every cool treasure hunter has stuff within reach of their computer. If you're really a treasure hunter, because you're always researching it. Stones are lost in this piece, and let me show you this one. You ready? I got a back
pewter.
Check this.
Oh wow!
Is that pewter?
No, this is a flint.
Oh really?
Oh, I mean, you're looking at the bracelet. I can't tell what you're seeing yet.
Yeah, the bracelet.
Yeah.
Look at that flint.
That's a flint.
Look at that. It's a war hammer.
Jeez.
Show the napping a little bit for me, would you?
Yeah, you ready?
Yeah.
That's.
Can you see it on there?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Look at that.
That's awesome. Is that from here in the country, the United States?
Yes, but it shouldn't have been found in the Americas.
Oh, okay.
Because supposedly they weren't up this far.
Nice,
I have more than you can imagine. Some of the most incredible collections of things and finds all over the world.
While
lucky
you
enough
were
to do this all over the world.
While you were out gathering some of your finds and artifacts, I was commenting about your study or your library, where you do a lot of your live feeds on Facebook from.
Right.
With all the cool stuff you have in there, statues and pictures and I think that's such a cool study.
I'm a book whore. That's number one. And my collection, I've been working on dwindling it down, but at one time it was about 6,000 books. I'm going to grab something. Hang on. Behind me, where I am is I am in my little nook where I repair ancient texts and books. I'm going to show you something real quick.
Okay. That's so cool. How would you like to go treasure hunting with this guy? I tell you.
Man.
But so when you see me on some of the broadcasts, I am. You see this library behind me, and that's because I have an office library and a personal library, and then I got a downstairs library. And at one time, 2 levels of my home and every hallway was library. But I worked to make sure a lot of the old collections I have are intact. And so that's what I got up to get here to show you. And I don't know how far my video is lagging behind, but this is a work I'm retooling and re-leathering, which is from the works of Josephus, which wrote the Antiquities of the Jews. I still have some work to do on it, but I had to take out the ends and repair the spine. That's why I'm still working on repairing this spine. But this is 250 some odd years old with old hand-cut wood plates and everything else. And so I worked diligently to try to repair a lot of these historic books and keep them for my family, and have all the pullouts and the maps and there's really what Solomon's temple really looked like. You're looking there. To preserve these old documents and be the keeper of these things. So this is one cool. of a 2-volume set. That's, right. 200 plus years old that I'm working on restoring. But yes, I am even though I've written all these books, and you can buy my books in hard form and you can buy my books in e-form, ebooks, I can't read an ebook. I have a mental disconnect. If I want to read on my computer and study, I'll find what I need and I print the damn page because I got to put it in my hand, and I got to just some disconnect with my mind.
I'm the same way.
And it's the same way with books. I got to have it in my hands. And so I fight this digital revolution, even though I'm a technologist when it comes to reading books. I still can't get this e-reader thing down. And I just love. It's
the scrolling.
Books. Yeah.
It's the scrolling. I want to open the page and read the whole page. I don't want to have to scroll down and read the rest of the page. It's irritating. That's funny.
Yeah. So
okay, a couple people in here been wanting to know what you think about aliens.
Again, I'll answer it. I'll answer it with science.
Okay, but before you do, I'm going to answer it out of just ignorance.
Okay.
I believe in aliens. Okay, I believe in Bigfoot.
Yeah.
So because there's just no way that we're the only ones. It just doesn't ring in my head right. So
right.
Okay. So now for a smart answer.
Here's my answer about aliens and that phenomenon. I believe too in things that may have become known in modern lore as Bigfoots or whatever. All hang on. I know it's just really rude. I'm going to step away, but I can actually show you something. So hang on.
Okay. I'm not saying it's aliens, but it's aliens.
We like show and tell.
It's aliens.
Yeah, definitely. This is cool. And Jovan's really showing us some pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's aliens either, but it's
aliens.
Sorry, it's aliens. One of the last frontiers of archaeology, really virgin territory, is China, and many of those that follow me know that my last work in China was not this Christmas, but the Christmas before. And, you know, China is one succeeding dynasty over another that wipes out all learning of the previous one. But there's tons of archaeological sites. If you go back to the Hongshan dynasty, which is in the BCs, what I'm holding up here is basically a jade plate, okay? And if you can see this jade plate, this was what they would call a page in a book. It's just a piece of jade. You see the white in it because it's really old. Y'all see that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yep. It looks like a rock.
Now, can you see this?
Yeah, I'm seeing it all right.
Okay, let's just negate the subject.
Some
right?
ancient pornography there.
Let's just negate the subject for a moment. But look at the people.
Right.
They're Neanderthal.
Okay.
I have the same individual on plates that they were leading packs of dogs for men who were hunting, and the men are small and these guys are huge. And so there are artifacts out there that are thousands of years old. This is pushing 5,000 years old, by the way, that show these hominids and these what we could possibly call Bigfoot creatures. So I believe absolutely they're real. And by the way, that is a page from a book talking about creation, or what we would call creation. The next thing is how would I answer aliens? I would answer aliens this way. I think everybody on this planet at one time or another has met an alien. Do you believe that?
I was born in this country.
I might have to believe that.
And I believe that because I think the answer is really simple. We
are
the aliens. Now, let me tell you how I came to that conclusion. First off, if you were to look at it in DNA, we have been told for a long time that from a DNA standpoint, the difference between chimpanzee and man is less than 1%. But if you look at that 1%, in that 1%, there's basically 300 chromosomes. In those 300 chromosomes, difference between monkey and man, 271 of them that are in man occur in nothing else on this planet. Right. Now, the reason that's important is because from my computer screen to this piece of flint, to a house plant, to that leather on the book, we all share all this conglomerate of DNA and similarities. But yet in man, in that 1% difference between man and monkey, there are 271 lines of that code that exist nowhere on this planet. Now, that's my first bit of proof. My second bit of proof is, what is the history of planet Earth?
We're waiting.
Well, I mean,
we don't know.
Okay.
You're the expert.
I think I can sum up the history of Earth for you. This planet at one time was volatile and was massive, big, honking ass dinosaurs. Right? We know that for a fact. And then something happened that wiped them all out. That's why we have fossils. We know that happened. But in an evolutionary instant, all of a sudden we have all these brand new species of animals, insects, flora, and fauna, and man. To me, because there is no missing link, I think the reality is we are the aliens. And the last bit of proof I use for that is if you go to and research a lot of the ancient temples, right? In fact, on my history show that I do every morning, What Happened This Day in History, I was just talking the other day about Galileo discovering Jupiter and its moons. That was in 1642, right? However, if you go to these ancient temples that are 5,000 and 6,000 or more years old, you have depictions of celestial features like Pleiades and other stuff that even supposedly as modern man, we didn't know about until the 1700s. So how did they know? But there's one interesting twist. See, everything you're taught today is from Earth out. Earth, moon, sun, and so on. When you look up the ancient temples, how do they depict it? Backwards, from the outside in.
From someone coming down to us.
Yes, from deep space coming to us.
All our gods come from up. All the gods in.
So how in the hell did they know? How in the hell did they know where these planets were? How did they know these star constellations and we're supposed to be it? And many of them we didn't even know till the 16 or 17 or 1800s. Hell, Pluto was a discovery in our time. Right. How did they know? And I think that answers it for all of us. This planet was something different. I think we're the survivors. We're the aliens.
Because there is no link. There's no link between anything else.
Right.
So in that, do you think that we're aliens because we've been seeded here or because we were left behind?
I think it's one and the same. I think it's colonization, and I think it's a much further timeline than we could ever imagine, possibly 1,000,000 years, and that we've been destroyed and had to regenerate a few times over just due to astronomical calamities. So it's both. We were seeded, and now we're the survivors.
Okay.
Now,
of course, and that takes us to religion, and why religion doesn't want us to know about these things.
Well, you got to remember the interesting thing. First off, I'm a Jew. I have a different perspective than most people. If you grew up in the Christian sense or whatever denomination you, Church of Christ, Baptist, whatever the case may be. But the one thing we need to remember is in the Jewish term, Messiah, was this figure, Jesus, and in the Christian concern, he's your Holy Trinity. But Messiah, in ancient terms, only means the one who would bring the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob to the world. So you have to ask yourself, did this fellow, Jesus, actually accomplish that? And it is a irrefutable fact. Of course he did. It's why most people know about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and monotheism. So that's the first part of it. But I want you to understand, if you go back and look at Jesus's message, Jesus said something that was heretical. And of course, my tagline is, I'm the history heretic. Jesus got in trouble in his day for saying a very interesting thing. And he said, see this place that keeps on telling you to bring your money to them and give it to them? You don't need to do that. See this building here made by men saying, do it our way? You don't need to do that. And he preached something very revolutionary. And what was revolutionary is that you have a direct connection to God. And so when it comes to religion, you must understand, we are all directly connected, period, whether you acknowledge it or not. And religion is completely different than faith. Religion is the man-made aspect of controlling faith.
Controlling the masses.
Correct. It's two different things. You can be faithful and not be religious. You can be religious and sacrilegious. You can be religious because you like the ritual and still be faithful, right? It takes all of them. But you must understand, people, and by the way, half of my library is theological text. People misunderstand the difference between religion and faith, religion and ritual, and religion and history.
Yeah, I definitely see that, all over. Now, I saw a video not too long ago. They were talking about the Anastasies and that they believed they were eaten by, well, with the offspring of the offspring of the fallen watchers would be the Nephilim, correct?
Right, Nephilim.
So they were they came to a conclusion that they didn't leave because of overpopulation and starved out or whatever, that they were actually eaten by the giants in those days.
Number one, if you go back and study some of the ancient texts, Talmud, Kabbalah, a lot of ancient texts, they talk often about the Nephilim came to talk to men, and it was always associated with their burnt offerings because the burning of the fat and flesh attracted the Nephilim, right? Basically, that's a good barbecue, brother. You know what I'm talking about?
Right.
And it all refers to that. I don't know, I haven't heard that account, but I do know in the Vatican accounts, and even to the new Vatican archives that have been opened up, particularly with, let me see, in fact, I got a copy right here, particularly with, let me pull it up on my screen, an archive which is a Tolteca Tolkien. It's called Index number 34, and it's a picture released by the Vatican. And it's a group of native Teotihuacans, Mexico Highlands, that they captured and put to death a giant. And what you see in this picture is you see a giant who has been tied around the waist, tied around the neck and arm, and tied around the feet. And then there's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. It's taking 16 men to drag this giant who they have gutted. You can see his guts spilled out, who they're dragging to this fire to burn it. And the reason the natives are dragging this giant, which they call the old ones or the ancient ones, to this fire, and this is during conquistador time, by the way, is the natives were finally able to catch this one because this one was doing two things. It was raiding their crops and it was eating people. And that's right out of the Vatican archives.
Okay. I've read a bit of Enoch. I've read Enoch, the book of Enoch, and the book of, I don't want to say Jubilees, Jashar. And it has talked about the Watchers that came down on Mount Haram and the giants and stuff like that, and how they got to a point where the people couldn't keep them sustained, so they turned on the people and started eating the people and stuff. So I just thought that was an interesting point, that one researcher believed that giants in the Southwest is the reason why there is a sudden, the big mystery now of the Anasazi nation. So thank you.
So there's a lot of good books on it. You know, the canonized Bible is only the Jewish Bible plus 33 texts, 60 total, out of thousands that were considered heretical. So there's none. I'll answer Chris P here. No, I've never been abducted. I might look like an alien, but I've never been abducted.
All right, Mr. Chadwick.
But I've been probed. No. No, I've never been abducted.
But not by an alien, right?
No.
Down East Detecting has a question. Jay, do you only search out major historical finds, or do you work with local metal detecting clubs and such to recover local history?
I only have so much time in my life that I'd love to do a lot of work with local clubs and detecting clubs, but unfortunately I have to choose what I'm involved in very carefully. And my life is balanced between my exploration, my writing, and my technical work. And so if you were just to look at the last 2 weeks in my life, I started work on my new novel. I've got a brand new technology company that we're launching. And then I was just down at NASA in Houston because I'm putting together a project for the flight to Mars. And I have to pick carefully what I can work on. And I just don't have time to do some of the local things that I'd love to do, but I would encourage anybody to do it if they can do it. I just can't seem to find the time. And I'm a guy that's up before 4:30, already working on it, and going all night. And I still don't have enough time in the day.
I know that feeling. And I'm a lazy, old, retired guy. And I still don't have enough time. Okay, let's see. Any other questions? Anybody want to call in? Somebody call in tonight.
Yeah, definitely. Let's put this phone line to use. We have a great guest with us, and like Chris said, the best yet.
We've only had one caller.
Yeah.
So
I'm surprised Chris hasn't called.
So what do you think of this theory about the reason the aliens came here was and the reason we are is as laborers for mining gold?
Anunnaki made us to be gold miners?
Zachariah Sitchin, who is the work you're talking about, the historian that did the work on those Sumerian texts that came up with that stuff, I think he was a very good researcher, and I respect his work. He's a damn good scholar. The one thing that led me to believe that Stitchin was onto something was talking about the gold mines that they found in ancient Africa that went miles deep into the crust. And in modern times, even today, we still don't go that deep, but yet these mines were potentially thousands of years old. How did they ever go that deep? And that was one of the things that led me to believe that Sitchin might be onto something. And then the second thing I believe that convinced me of his work is vitrification. And vitrification is basically what happens to sand when a meteor impacts or a bomb blast goes off, and it transforms the sand to glass or to a gemstone. And if you would look at the ancient Sinai Peninsula, which has all of this vitrified area, and you went into Google Earth and look at the Sinai Peninsula from the Dead Sea, right? But you pull back a little bit and look at it and compare it to the ancient text. The ancient texts talk about the ancients battling and ancient wars and a fight over this earth and ancient weapons that could be likened to Lot and Saul and pillars of salt and complete devastation. And when you look at the Sinai Peninsula, the Sinai Peninsula is literally, to me, looks like a blast pattern. And so when you look at that and you look at the Earth's bait and it's vitrified, I think it leads some credence to some sort of ancient something big, weaponized, battle-wise, took place there.
Okay, we have a caller on the line. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
This is Chris Chadwick from down in West Virginia.
What's up, Chris?
Gentlemen,
how you doing, buddy?
Wonderful, wonderful show. I tell you what, my week has sucked. This is the highlight. I'm enjoying this to the 10th degree. We got to have this guy back on again.
Well, before you ask your question, Chris, let me ask you a question.
Sure.
How much money have you made selling jewelry and stuff?
Oh, not nearly enough, because I stopped it about 2 years ago when I felt like I was giving away the farm, and I ended up being as a lost leader to build that group up a little bit. So you guys know I give away more than I ever make.
We know.
Pays the bills.
I'm
Oh,
just
we know,
razzing on you
buddy.
because
No,
you
that
asked
was
that
was one of my
question.
questions. I want to know what
Yeah, I
his
know.
biggest treasure find ever was.
Right.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
one of the
Without
long
letting.
list of your questions.
Oh yeah. Oh, I tell
Right.
you what, I'm feeling my oats tonight.
I guess.
Again, guys, it's
Hey,
all in good fun. But I tell you
hey,
what,
knock
if it
yourself
wasn't
out,
such
man.
a super guest, I wouldn't be so interactive tonight.
Talk to him. He's
I
all
think.
yours.
Thanks, Chris. I think the largest find that we have found to date is what could be, because it's not capitalized on yet, but it is tested out. Could be a multi-billion-dollar mineral deposit,
Wow.
but of course it's not realized yet. The second thing from there, I think the most impactful find is what you're going to see Scott Wolter and I very soon release on the public, which will rewrite the history of the world and North America as you know it. And that is immeasurably invaluable to mankind.
Man, you got me.
Well,
got my
you know
interest
they're not
intrigued,
going to
to
let
say the
you.
least.
You know they're not going to let you release that. We're going to change the history of the world. They're not going to allow you to do that.
Well, see, people seem to think that you kind of do this stuff in real time, and you don't.
Right.
And anything you do on TV, you already know about. And so this has been such an ongoing documented project with so many different academics and stuff of how the way we have had to do it, that there is no way to pull it back once it's released. It's just done. It's gone. You can't pull it back. And so we've had to work very hard to have a standard that most networks, producers, or otherwise are not used to living to, because believe me, the television business is a business of horrors. And if they think they can make your origin story be, if you could be a treasure hunter, but could you be from the Jersey Shore, talk with an accent, wrestle gators, and make moonshine? Now that would be a better show. And so we have to fight that stuff all the time. And part of it is just getting the story out. But we have something that academics don't have, and that's the power of television. And so with this project held to an incredible standard, which we think will be compelling TV with millions of viewers, academia will not be able to pull it back, and it will be a reverse push-pull. We will push it to the viewers and give them the truth and the facts where they can make up their own mind, and they don't need some educated derelict telling them it's phony, a fraud, or fake. And then they will drag it through the institutional systems because it's in their vernacular, in their conscience, and they know the truth and it can't be sheltered. Remember, the art of archaeology is peer review. Make a discovery, send it to 10 people who believe the exact same crap you do, that they'll put their name on it. And if one of them doesn't believe the way you do, it doesn't get published. So archaeologists and anthropologists can't publish this, but here's the rub. I'm neither one, so it doesn't matter. They can't fire me, and they can't revoke my retirement.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Well, I've truly enjoyed this show tonight, gentlemen. I'll tell you what, it's been refreshing, and it's been interesting and enlightening, and I think, a lot of the theories that are out there, I'm definitely going to check out the videos, books, the show. I'm looking forward to it. I mean, you've got me hooked, hook, line, and sinker.
Sweet.
History is fascinating. History
truly
is fascinating. And if we could get more young people into history and looking up and participating in history, they will find the truth on their own and forever start on a path of discovering the truth and what matters in life, and forever turn away from the Kardashians. That's my goal.
Yeah, that's the real aliens right there.
Right.
Kardashians. There you go. That and Rosie O'Donnell.
That's a whole other species.
Yeah, that's your missing link right there.
Did you? Well, I can't tell you that. Never mind. I was going to tell you, they caught Rosie O'Donnell at the airport. They busted her for crack recently.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, seriously. She's like going through security, and evidently they found 30 pounds of it up under her skirt.
Okay.
Butt crack. Her butt crack.
I'm just waiting for the punchline.
That was it.
Oh, okay. Oh, duh.
You gotta think on your feet there,
I'm
Dick.
bad.
Yeah, I know.
I'm bad.
That's too funny. Well, I've truly enjoyed it. And anytime you want to put up a promo or a post on my little old East Coast prospecting, you feel free to just send me a message there. I'd love to get you a little promo out there. It's about a little over 4,000 members. I know there's a lot of treasure hunters on there too, and I know we'd love to hear from you.
I'd love to help in any way. This year, I'm publishing a new book series. We've been working on it for a while. But if you go to most research outlets like Google or whatever, you can find about 1,100 ghost towns by GPS or whatever. We spent several years, 9 years almost, working on a project, and we have mapped every state and from old records, all the ghost towns. And we now have a collection by GPS coordinates, by county, of a little over 16,300 hidden places that used to be on the maps that are not anymore. And we're going to publish it in a state-by-state chronicle, and medical detectors can just put in the codes and go have fun.
Now, that's a book I'd buy. No doubt.
It's 50 bucks if you want it each state. We put out one by each state. But, yeah, 16,000 different locations. We've done the research for you. Go for it.
I'll just pick whatever state I'm in there in retirement.
Hopefully,
there you go. If the Trump bump keeps going, my real gold mine's my 401k. So we get 7 more years of this. I'm retiring in 5 or 6.
You better believe it.
Yep, just a little bit more. Keep right on going. I'll be a happy camper.
Absolutely.
Well, I want to jump off. You guys, thank you so much. And again, Mr. Hutton, awesome.
Thank you very much.
I really enjoyed the show. Both Ed and Jess, my hat's off to you guys. Great show tonight.
Hey, you guys are the ones. Chris. You guys are the ones. You and the rest of the audience are the ones that are keeping us here, and we enjoy your company. So thank you, Rick.
And like
Chris,
Jovan was saying,
and all the kidding was just in good fun. Just in good
fun.
Absolutely.
We know that. We know you. Jeez.
Yeah, I'm a cut up. I know that.
Yeah, that's why I asked you the question I asked you right off the bat.
Oh, you knew. But you remember, I've been retired from that for 2 years. And but the show lives on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen.
Well, I have to say, Chris, like Jovan was saying, I'd be doing this. The show must go on, even if there was one person out there. We do it. I do it. We do it for you, all of you out there. Definitely. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care, gentlemen. Bye-bye.
So we got Pirate Dredger's been asking, Pirate Dredger has been asking a few questions. And
he wants to know if Conan the Barbarian was a Sumerian. I saw that.
Right. And he also wants to know if Chinese discovered America.
There is a book that was written in ancient China, and it got lost long ago, but recently a copy of it was found translated to Korean, and it tells a story of a Chinese prince sailing to what we now know as the Americas, and this would have been several hundred years before Christopher Columbus. And this Chinese prince came with people on his ship that had smallpox. And he basically used it as a weapon against the natives and would infect villages and take them over. And he thought he was a great leader and ruler. And when he went back to his country, and this was shared with his father, his father was forever shamed by his son and stuff, and they struck all of this expedition from the books. However, in this, they talk about they carved a great dragon on this rock wall along a river, a massive dragon. And that dragon was always known to exist until the late 1800s when the government blew it up from the face of the rock for no explained reason. And so I do believe that the Chinese were here first. And when I say first, I just mean before Columbus. There were others here first, but the Chinese were here. There's evidence of it on each shore. There's evidence of it in DNA, following the DNA line, which you can't mess with, you can't fake. And there's known rivers in the Americas that have Chinese junks in them, not the Chinese's junk, but the Chinese junk, the name of their ship. And the government will not allow them to be investigated, and they're kind of hidden and not spoken of. But they sailed ships that were as large as our destroyers. They were floating cities. Other cultures know about this. The Asian cultures know about it. But in the Americas, we have intentionally hidden that. And it's all over manifest destiny, who can lay claim to the land.
Interesting. Interesting in the sense that as free as this country is supposed to be, we still have things that are hidden from us, things that they don't want to admit to. You know what? I don't understand the harm. I guess I'm just not smart enough to understand it, but it just seems like, you know.
I could put it to you this way, and this is why I think it's so hard. The first thing is the movement for American slavery repatriation of reparations, and which is this trend to basically have Black Americans get reimbursed because of ancestors' slavery. But the actual numbers of slaves in the United States of America were very minimal compared to what actually went to the South Americas and the Caribbeans. Now, because that is an active litigated movement, the government and world governments afraid of it, right? Deathly afraid of it, because they don't want to get into this vapor legal lock with the way the system works. And then you got to understand the other side of the coin. The other side of the coin is the United Nations, which is no friend of the United States of America, right. Although we carry the load. These are countries that want to see us go down. If you were to go into Libya and you were to read textbooks by the family and rulers leading up to Gaddafi, you would find that they talk about a fact that they discovered Americas, which is technically correct because they were selling out of Magna Lempta and the ancient ports of Tunisia and Libya and Phoenicians and Carthage times. But even that has to be hidden from history, because always in the Middle East, especially in Libya, they have talked about how America stole the Americas from the ancestors of Muammar Gaddafi. So you have to understand there's a political hotbed in a lot of this. And when you have a United Nations and this failing judgment that if we play nice, everybody will play nice, which is horseshit, that they're just worried about governments of the country banding together because now we use laws and courts as weapons to weaponize history against America, because the United States, because the United Nations would love nothing more than to see the United States fail. And that is the careful line we walk with these discoveries, that we always have to make a judgment call. What do we talk about? What do we don't talk about? What do you put in the vernacular? What's safe? What's not? Because it's a political hotbed out there. And right now, in case you haven't noticed it, it's hip to hate on America. And it's so pervasive that they've taught our own damn kids to do it.
Right. Yes.
So it's much deeper. It is a war. It is a war that we fight every day about truth and knowledge. And we have to work to push it so far back into the real port of time before a lot of the recorded time, so nobody has a higher ownership claim than the other. And it's a dirty, nasty, vulgar, ugly business trying to bring about the truth about history.
Back to we all got to be exactly equal.
That's right. Which no other society ever believed. And the societies before us that have believed that have disappeared from the maps. Right. The societies that went down fighting always resurrected. The societies that caved in and did it peacefully got subsumed and were obliterated from the map.
Yeah, you're right. The UN is not our friend. That's for sure. I don't even know why it's here.
Well, it's been remade a few times, but it's this old image of where we try to look like we play nice with everybody in the world. I work global in nature, but I am not a globalist.
Right.
Meaning you have a country, you have your own resources, you have your own laws. Make the best with your country. And if your leaders, like what's going on in Iran, want to have you running around in dirty night sheets with no jobs and abject poverty just because they want to spend the billions they get on killing Jews, then you should probably get rid of that regime, because those billions could go in to building your country and resources, and you can have a great capitalist-driven society where all of you can make a living and prosper. That's right. The grand American experiment.
Right. And now we need to get off the politics and religion and get back to gold and treasure hunting.
I swear to God, I won't talk about Trump. How's that?
Yeah. No, it's not. No, it's not about Trump. Just politics in general.
Oh, that was a joke. I mixed politics.
Yeah, I know.
But it's a joke.
And I was gonna get on the slavery.
Don't ask a patriotic Jew about the Middle East. Come on, guy.
I don't think we. Oh yeah, he did Sumerian. That's right.
Right.
How do we get to the Middle East?
Well,
yeah, right.
It was like the Mesopotamians. They were here and mined out. I believe I might have picked this up from Scott or you, Jovan. The Mesopotamians mining the copper out of Island Royale and the Upper Peninsula, and like all the copper mines in Europe wouldn't have, or Middle East and that area would have never supplied the copper used during the Bronze Age.
It's too much. They didn't have enough native copper, and they didn't have enough tin to transform copper into bronze. And yes, I do believe that the ancient Minoans and Phoenicians mined copper in the Great Lakes to fuel the Bronze Age.
Okay, Minoans, that's it. Yes, I definitely believe people have been coming to this world, to this part of the world, for millennia.
Right.
Yeah, it's so messed up how they can't let us know the truth in their eyes. They just have to hide everything from us. But everything that is hidden will come to light, I do believe.
So I see that on chat that David Villa said, "Where's the gold?" And Rastaman Ralph said, "No gold, no good." I want to remind you, go back and replay this. I told you how to find huge storehouses of gold right here in the Americas if you're willing to do research. And I gave you good bona fide tips to find virgin gold fields. Go back and rewatch this 3-hour, 40-minute, and 3-second narrative.
Just for your information, as you notice, they're talking about this as a record.
Not yet.
No, it's not.
No, but Judy's starting. I
we
just
hear
heard Judy say Ed.
We're going to hear a stomp. You'll hear a stomp in a minute.
Yeah.
That's probably true.
I don't want to beat anybody's record. Let's don't take Judy's record from
No,
her.
no, Judy's my wife, and she could hear us right at her bed.
Well, according to what I've been
told, boom, boom.
Yeah, according to what I've been told, is wife equates to boss. So pay attention.
Yeah, yes. And happy wife, happy life.
There you go.
Yeah, I just heard her yelling. I must have laughed too loud.
You did. You woke her up.
Let's see. Yeah, she's yelling. Okay.
So let's wrap this up. Let's do 3 rapid fire final questions. Fire away. I'll answer them quick, and then we'll wrap for the evening. And I won't take anybody's coveted longest show ever title from them.
Oh, I would have loved to stay longer. I need to move my studio out from my basement to my shop or something.
Yeah, it needs to go out in the shed.
When we do the big cleanup, we'll do it.
You guys got any more questions? You need to get them right back because we're going to be leaving here in a minute.
Or call real quick, one of the two.
Or call, yeah.
So Downey's Detecting and Prospecting said that Warhammer would look good on my wall. What do you say? My answer would be my Warhammer. Let's see.
Your wall.
That's right. My Warhammer, my wall. Let's see if there's any other that I can answer real quick that I missed. We can't handle the truth. Ask Jack. Chris, I'll give you an interesting piece of trivia. Aubrey, who's my cousin that's more like my brother, that you saw with me on Curse of Oak Island, on our team, he's part of Alpha Team. His nickname's The Beast. You can see why. Well, if you ever watch the movie, A Few Good Men, or it is, and you see Jack Nicholson is the prosecutor at Guantanamo Bay. He's the major, right? But Tom Cruise is the prosecutor. And the major general at Guantanamo Bay tells them, you want the truth? You can't handle the truth. Here's an important piece of trivia. My cousin Aubrey, who's more like my dear brother, that character in real life is his father-in-law. He married his daughter. So, talk about a tough family. That's modeled after a real character. Okay, let's see what else.
Prospector Ruby wants to know where there's treasure in Utah.
Oh my God.
That's mine.
How about Prospector Ruby? Are you going after Bixbite in Utah? Are you in the Wawas? Is that where we say Prospector Ruby? I love Utah, not only for gold, not only for artifacts, not only for ancient treasures, but I love Bixbite and the barrels that are in Utah, which is one of the rarest gemstones on the planet, and it is only found in Utah. And effectively what it is a bright red, blazing bubblegum red emerald. And you only find that in the Wawa Mountains of Utah. And if gold is $1,100 an ounce today, a good Bixbite clear right now is about $300,000 an ounce.
Wow.
So go find some of that.
Okay, I'm on my way. See you next week.
Okay, guys, I'm going to beg off. Thanks for having me.
Hey, it was our pleasure.
This is the best way to do it. Just let it all hang freestyle.
Yep.
See what goes. I'm here to support the advocation. I am here to support artifact hunters and metal detectorists and all this other stuff. I just work to try to get people to do it right. Like I say, if you're a mound hunter, never post a video of you digging in a mound. That's kind of stupid, right? You found it laying on the ground.
Right.
Hold it to some standards and stuff, but promote the sport because worst case, you're getting out and about. But like I said at the beginning of the show, I truly believe it is the metal detectorists and the prospectors in America that will be the ones that make the discovery that rewrite the Americas, right? And it's not too bad if you happen to stumble across a T-Rex fossil, because they go for about $10 million a piece.
Ooh.
There you go.
Yeah, man.
So, guys, thanks for having
so
me.
just real
It's
quick.
been a great pleasure.
Real quick question.
Yes.
I don't know. I don't know if you watch it or not. I really don't watch it anymore. But on Gold Rush, Hoffman found a tusk. What 2-3 years ago? Buried in the tundra. They found a mastodon tusk. Now they never said what they sold it for, but what is something like that worth?
It really depends upon what condition it's in. Is it fossilized? Is it opalized? Right, which of course makes it even rarer. If it's intact, if it's in the skull, if it's broken or whatever. But you're talking something that easily is a few $1,000s. Could be worth more. I know in Montana, Utah, and Nevada, you can still find ancient turtles, the entire turtle fossilized. I know that recent things like that have gone for anywhere from $50,000 to $170,000 for just a really good large turtle fossil. So some of these things are worth thousands on the open collectors market. And I would also remind you, those of you that are working in the forest and the rivers, remember your friend in Bass Pro. And the reason I say that is right now, a good 9-foot rattler, a diamondback rattler, if you catch it alive and don't get yourself killed, will bring on the zoological market and circuit about 50 grand.
Wow. Can't shoot him first though, huh?
You gotta catch him first. And remember, he or she can strike half the distance of their body.
Right.
But big rattlesnakes are in big demand with zoos, what do they call it, herpetariums, the Bass Pros and stuff in the world. Everybody who doesn't like to look at a big rattlesnake, and they're just exceptionally valuable. All kinds of stuff to find out there. Train yourself in multi-disciplines. Train yourself to look at rocks. Train yourself to look at gold. But there is one side effect, and the side effect is the more you train yourself to look at rock and gold, you're screwed for the rest of your life, because you can never have a vacation.
We know that.
Excellent.
So thanks, guys.
Excellent.
Have a great night. Thank
you very much.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
It's been a lot of fun. And
I'm glad you had a good time.
What I do,
I'm glad, and I hope you enjoyed yourself, and maybe we can have you back again. It'd be awesome. I know our chat room was pretty lively there and asking lots of questions, so that was cool.
Cool.
Appreciate you being here. Thanks a lot.
Very much, Jovan. And say thank you to, oh shoot, I'm forgetting his name right off the bat. I said it right earlier. Oh well.
Scott Walter?
Yeah.
Was that what it was?
I think so.
Put a buzz.
Somebody said they wanted Scott on the show. Could we get Scott on the show?
I did.
I'd
love that. No, but your assistant that I exchanged emails with. Yeah.
Who's that?
Yeah. Thank him for me again.
She is a priceless asset, ex-military, runs logistics, gets this all straight. She's the only person on the planet that knows where I am at every single point in the day, makes stuff like this happen. So, Cosette.
Well, it was a pleasure working with us, both of you. Give my regards to her for me, and for me and my partners here at Flash in Your Pan and on Tuesday Night Hangout Live. I can't tell you what this means to me, Jovan. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, and guys, thank you for allowing me to flash in your pan tonight.
Hey, no problem. I tell you what, I was happy to sit down and talk with you, ask you some questions, get to know a little bit about you, and it's been enjoyable.
Thank you much.
And I'll be honest with you, a lot different than what I thought it was going to be, because I watched some of your videos and looked at some of the comments you had on there. You got a lot of haters, dude.
I have a lot of haters.
He's
I
doing
have
a
a lot of
lot
haters.
right then, huh?
Yep. I can't
You know
be all
what?
bad.
It's easy to hide behind a computer and hate,
Right.
and it's easier to hate
That's
than
right.
embrace the truth. And then
Right.
there are a certain amount of people that hate on me because they know it gets them attention. So
There you go.
what you see
There
is
you go.
what you get. I'm just a real dude who has fun at what I do. Anyway, good night, gentlemen.
I enjoyed talking with you tonight. Hope we can do this again.
Thank you so very much. Take care, gentlemen. I'm hanging up. Bye-bye.
All right.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for your time. That excellent guest. Excellent guest.
That was fun.
This
Thank you.
has been the makings of like 3 months.
Yeah.
You know, I was talking to Joan. Oh shoot, I forget her name. But I sent Hutton an email, a message on Facebook. He replied and told me that she would be contacting me. There it was. We worked on a date, and there it is. And voila. And if he can work for Sky, get Scott Walters on, that would be excellent too. And for all of you out there, our YouTubers and friends, thank you very much for joining us tonight. I could have gone for hours more, but
No, you couldn't.
maybe if my studio was out in the shop, yeah, but in the basement underneath her room, not so much.
You know, it was cool to talk to him, and you know, as I was telling you earlier, I was a little apprehensive about him because of all the hating that he was getting. But after sitting there and talking to him and listening to him and watching some of his videos today, because I did a lot of video watching the last couple of days on his stuff. Very intelligent, very smart. He doesn't seem to, you know, feed a lot of bull crap. I don't know how much of what he's saying is bull crap, you know, but I know I enjoyed talking to him. I know he has some really interesting stuff, and he kind of has the same ideas that I do, which makes it a lot nicer.
Right.
You know,
Definitely.
but definitely, what good show. I mean, he was very engaging. I'm glad he was on.
Showed us some pretty neat stuff.
Yeah. That was cool. A little show
That was pretty cool.
Wealth
I hope
information.
our audience liked it, and we had I think at one point 30 people in here.
More than that, we had close to 40. 30,
Did we? Okay.
38, 39.
Yeah.
I
We
was
got
hoping
35
for
likes.
more.
Yep, that's right, Chris.
More.
Non-believers are haters. You know,
Yeah.
you have to have an open mind on everything. I mean, you can't go around your life having a closed mind just because your thoughts are what you believe doesn't mean that other thoughts aren't just as valid. You know,
Right.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know. So
Oh, yeah.
we all have to be able to you know, interact with each other and understand that we're all individuals, but we're basically all the same. We all, you know, want, you know, that American dream, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. You know, so yeah, really enjoyable. I enjoyed tonight's show. It was really good.
So
Good time.
to say the least. To
know?
say the least. It was. I'm.
But the most important thing is that our audience liked the show, and it
Definitely.
seemed like most everybody in there was really engaging in the chat room tonight, talking about what we were talking about. A couple get off the track a little bit, but you know we always do.
We could have just squeezed in a
right.
couple more callers, but you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if
You
they
know,
call.
Hopefully, people will start using that phone line more.
Everybody's
Right.
liking his Warhammer, Chris
Yeah,
and
that was really
Bob
cool.
both.
I mean, that was awesome.
That's
Oh,
killer.
oh,
That's
yeah.
killer.
I actually wish Tim would have been in here. In fact, I'm gonna tag him in here so he can watch this video so he can see that. You know, my napping buddy.
Oh yes.
You know?
Definitely. And then, geez, I could just go on and on.
Yeah, but I think it's good for tonight, and I think we should wish everybody a good night.
Yeah, I think I'll ask Jovan if he'd come back when Scott Walters comes on. That'd be a
You can call in too, yeah.
Ed's still got an hour's worth of work even after we're gone.
I don't know, Chris. That'd be something Ed would know. What's the record attendance for the show, for a show?
I think Jocelyn was up there, wasn't she?
Yeah, she was in the 40s. I think hers was the highest amount. But I was hoping Jovan would promote it a little more ahead of time.
Right, yeah, he kind of did it late.
Right, and I reminded him when I reminded him a couple weeks ago about tonight. I'm like, please do self-promoting and stuff, but I know he's a busy man. He does his podcast every day, This Day in History. He has another podcast, plus his other irons that are in his fires. I know he's a really busy man, and I'm just very grateful for him taking his valuable time as the billionaire he is.
We have a guy here, Bob G. Muth.
Yeah, I see that. I was just reading it.
Yeah, he's been following Hutton for years, and this has been by far the most interview you've ever given. Well, that's cool.
Best interview.
Bob.
He typed in best down at the bottom. He
did he
word.
Best?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, he did. Thanks,
cool.
Bob.
It's glad to hear that. Glad to hear that.
Well, and it was just a matter of letting them talk.
Well, the best thing, the most important thing about interviewing someone is listening.
Right. Yes.
And
that's a wealth of information too.
Oh yeah.
Yes, Chris. Absolutely, Chris. Yes, we had a good turnout on your night, but that was because you self-promoted.
Oh yeah.
That's what happens.
You were the record holder for a long time, Chris. So
need to get him on again.
Oh yeah, Chris.
We don't want him back on no more. Rambles on.
I'm really surprised Dennis.
But he has a good time doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Please surprised Dennis Dayton didn't show up and call.
Oh yeah.
About Curse of Oak Island and stuff.
Bob's got one beer left. He said.
How our buddy Diva DD can be.
Yes. So were we a 6-pack or a 12-pack tonight, Bob?
He's only got one left, and he's still.
Well,
going.
I know, but and if you can type that, it must only been a 6-pack.
After all, he's in Maine, and they have a lot of snow, so
right.
Better to do.
24-pack.
No,
so I wonder, did that's the first time, sorry, Bob, I'm referring to the other Bob. Okay. Was Bob here during the whole show? I didn't see him until just toward the end. Did he miss the entire show? He must have been watching.
I don't know. He must have been and just sitting back there. And,
right.
Didn't post nothing.
Yeah.
I just wondered, Bob, I got a question for you. Did you learn anything new from all the times that you watched him? I know he's probably repeated stuff for you. I mean, well, were there some stuff that you learned? Was it worth coming in and listening to him again? Oh. Jaron says he's been here.
Right. Jaron's pretty up on that stuff.
I know.
He's the best moderator out there.
He's the best.
He's the sheriff, and we're the deputies.
Yep.
By the time I click that button, he's done moderated before I can get to it most times. I'm trying to race to it.
Is still here.
Who?
But that'd be a good question. That's a good question. Isn't that how you pronounce his name?
DeMuth.
DeMuth?
Bob DeMuth. Are you still here, Bob DeMuth?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if he learned any. I'm wondering if he learned anything new, or is it the same old stuff he's always going over?
Well, he did say it was the best interview he's ever heard of mine. So
right. Well,
I'll take that. Thank you very much,
absolutely.
David.
Heck yeah.
Thank you very much, Taz. I had a blast tonight. I have a good time on most of our shows.
You just like being on YouTube.
He'll wake up tomorrow and say, I stayed up too late now.
Yeah.
Oh, the guys at work, they know tonight's a big night. I talk about it Monday. I talk about it Tuesday.
I'm like Jesse now. I'm laid off for a few weeks, so I can stay up as late as I want right now.
Yep, I agree with you, Bob. Jerry would be a good co-host.
Yeah. You don't even like calling in. We've only got him calling.
Tread lightly, he says.
Oh, no. We never did get a response from the other Bob.
No, it's okay.
He must be gone.
Yeah.
Well,
says there's still 14 on mine watching.
That's what I got.
That's what I got, too. Well, thank you, everybody who stayed here till the very end.
Yes, thank everybody.
Thank you to our patrons out there. Your help does make things happen. And thank you, Jesse, Dano. As always, great friends here for me every week. Here for our YouTubers and friends out there around the world. And we really appreciate the time you spend with us because, like us, your time's valuable and it's also valuable to us. Thank you all very much.
Good night, everyone.
We're the reason I'll be yawning in the morning. You're welcome, Bob. All right, guys, on that note, thank you again. May you always have a flash in your pan.
And you know what he says.
That I do. Maybe one day too will be you on the river. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, Jesse. Good night, Dano.
Night, Ed. Night, Jesse.
Good night, Dano.
Bob.
Good night, Ed.
Good night, David.
Randy,
Scott.
David, Jared, thank you so much.
Very much.